Hogmaster for a minute. Oh, there he is. Okay.
All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going? This is Steve here at the Growing with Fishes podcast. Really awesome show this week. We have a heavy days all the way from Australia. So
Hey,
thanks for
hey.
joining us. And then we also
Yay.
have Roger,
How y'all doing?
Hogmaster,
How's everybody doing this evening?
and we got Josh from Touch Blooms.
Hello. Glad to be here and glad to have heavy days.
Yeah.
An international
Pretty cool.
podcast.
You guys are too kind.
What is it, our second or third Australian guest? I think it's probably a third Australian guest we've had.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll have to link up with whoever else you've had on.
We had Colin Byron Black, although I think he's a politician now. And then we had Rob Bob on as well from
nice.
Ponics. He's got quite the cool YouTube channel. So, but yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and how it is, being a cannabis enthusiast in Australia.
Yeah, so what I do, what most people do, I like to grow weed. Hopefully it's good. But I also dabble with a bit of breeding. Hopefully you guys have heard of the show, the podcast. It's a big passion of mine. I love it. I love every episode. And as well as broadly speaking, I'm involved in a few other things around the scene. Like we're really lucky to have like kind of the emergence of like an Australian Cannabis Cup kind of thing going on. And so I've been involved in that over last year as well as this year as well, which is really cool because like for the Australian scene, it's really kind of helping to bolster things. And we're kind of at this point as a scene, so to speak, whereby things are really picking up nicely. Like a lot of people are aware of how it's worthwhile to kind of find these really nice phenotypes and not just, grow whatever and have mediocre results. So things are really on the up and up. And overall, I would say the Australian scene's almost in like a bit of a renaissance period where it's really taking off, kind of in the same regard that you could say the same about the UK scene. I personally feel that way. Like I look at a lot of the stuff you find online about the UK scene, and it's really taking off. Like, it's making these big leaps. And I feel like Australia is kind of following suit in many regards.
It's nice to see that they're finally loosening up, and I see there's some production finally going on there, and they're not quite as close-minded as they used to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly like a medical system, but I think a lot of people would agree with me in that it's not the medical system you would want. It's kind of a bit of a farce. Like it's really hard to get onto it. I've only personally heard of one person who's actually been given access to it. Like, and I think a similar thing even happened in the States in some of the individualized states where like there was a program, but it was essentially like impossible to get onto it. And so that's kind of where we're at, though there is a changing trend. And, a lot of people predict that within the next 2 or 3 years, we'll have a much more kind of accessible medical program. But I'm very skeptical that it would be like comparable to say like a Prop 215 type of situation. That's obviously the dream, but I'm very skeptical of that personally.
It sucks that a lot of other places don't get their yeah, it just sucks that a lot of other places don't get that. Oh, sorry, I got my audio set all wrong. Damn.
I thought that some of the things that happened in the States was that it wasn't that they didn't have it so much; it was the fact they only allowed you to use it for one or two ailments. Like in South Carolina, you can only use it for epileptic seizures. And that's the only thing it's legal for. So that's where the limitations have hit us hard in the States. In the states that have started to accept CBD oil and such like that, they still are very tight, like you were saying.
Yeah, and I think that same issue occurs here as well, where there's only very limited things that are able to have it prescribed for, and then likewise, there's only a very select number of specialized doctors who are able to prescribe it. So there's even a smaller number of doctors than normal. So it's just hard to get access to these specialists as well. And like I personally know two people who, like 100% deserving of being on the scheme. They've got really bad Crohn's, and like I think currently Crohn's isn't like, regarded as something where you can get access for it. So like exactly the same problem you described.
Yeah, now so you're also saying it's really hard. Not only is it hard to get on, but if you can get on, you have to drive. Some people have to drive long ways to get to some doctor because there's so much limitation on even the doctors that can prescribe the medical.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And like, you've got to pay, exorbitant specialist fees just to see them. And then you might even get in that room and it turns out there's some, they're kind of, the term we use in Australia is the old boys club, whereby they're of this old school mindset. They don't believe in medical cannabis, all that type of thing. So you might get there, pay all that money for them to just turn around and be like, no, I'm not prescribed. No, I don't believe in that.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out. We had some audio problems with the other stream, and I'm trying to debug it, but that's okay. Show you have a really awesome podcast, and you had a lot of really awesome guests. You actually just had Josh and Kelly from Dragonfly Earth. They're really, really amazing people. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your show?
Yeah, of course. So my show, I say this to everyone, but I really feel like I need to hammer the point home. My show, honestly, always has been, always will be. It's just a labor of love. And a lot of people always say to me that like they feel like I ask questions that they would want to ask. And I feel like the really simple answer to that is because they're questions that I want to ask. Like the reason why I started the show was because I had a whole bunch of questions I wanted to ask breeders on like a personal level, like, like get in the DMs and have a full on chat with them. But it was like, I got so many questions. There's no way they're going to like entertain the thought of this. So I kind of thought, well, why don't I record it? And I'm sure there's a lot of people who have, some overlap in terms of the questions I'm going to ask and curiosity. So that was how it all started. And I always give props to, my mentor, Duke Diamond. He's the man. He gave me my start. He was the first person who ever did an interview with me. And he also, pulled some strings and allowed me to get that Skunk VA episode. And so with those two being the first episodes I ever did, I kind of got like a bit of momentum after that point and was able to travel on after that. And I mean, as we said, now we're up to episode 26, I believe, with the most recent being Josh and Kelly of Dragonfly, which, in my opinion, one of the favorite episodes so far. If you haven't checked it out, go take a listen, especially if you're into organics or soil. It's really kind of inspiring, to say the least. And then obviously special shout outs to the Skunk VA episode, which is like my favorite one. Everyone really likes that because he's just like master level storyteller. And then finally, the Bodhi interview is great. If you just want to be happy, if you just want to be inspired, go check it out. The dude is made of happiness and light.
I like that.
Very cool.
Yeah. Steve has lost your audio.
Oh, sorry about
Yeah,
that.
I was like,
what are some of the other guests that you guys have had on, and what are some of the really more unique things you've learned talking to different breeders?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Some of the more unique guests we've had on, I got some unique ones coming up that'll be a little left of the field, but I won't reveal. I'll maybe give you a little secret sooner or later. But one of the ones I really liked was, and I think a lot of people liked it, the Matt Riot interview. Not like necessarily that he's unknown or anything; he's very well known, but it was good. Like a lot of the interviews I do, you can tell that people are trying to be diplomatic in a certain regard. They've got feelings, but maybe they're gonna, kind of beat around the bush in a certain regard, especially if maybe someone's wronged them in the past. They might kind of soften the extent of what happened, things like that. Pretty standard stuff. People are nice. Matt, he's great, straight to the point. And so he's just like throwing punchlines out like you just would not believe. And I was just sitting there jaw dropped during the time, just like, man, this guy's not holding back. This is fantastic. So it was a good little change of pace because it made it, very interesting interview.
Let me mute him here.
Hey.
There we go.
But yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite ones. And in terms of like something unique I learned from the interviews, I think the interview I did most recently with One Eye from Oregon, he created the Dog Walker, he created Scooby Snacks, a few other things. But the most interesting thing he shared was that like he was intentionally breeding with hermaphroditic plants and how he feels that if you do it in a correct way, you can actually get good results, which is something I'd never heard anyone even talk about. It's almost like a taboo concept to like intentionally breed with hermaphroditic plants. But he explained it well, and there was conscious thought process behind it, and he explained it. And I guess at the end of the day, if you choose to not pursue that type of thing yourself, that's fine. But it was truly something which no one had ever even brushed on before.
That's real interesting. Now I can't wait to see people in the forums this week asking me all about breeding hermaphroditic plants. Great. Thanks.
Yeah, just tell them to go check out the One Eye interview. It's got a lot of info in it.
That's exactly what I'm going to do.
So have you had a chance to see a lot of plants down there, or here and there?
Yeah. I mean, you mean in Australia?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We got a thriving scene, and that's something I'm really grateful for. Is that through having done the show, and just through being involved in a few other things around Australia, I've been able to link up with a lot of really like-minded people, and there is a scene down here for sure, but it's up to you to build it, and that's what I've realized. And so, in certain regards, I'm very proactive about trying to build the scene. And when I meet someone and they're cool, I'll send them a cool clone, and I've got a lot of really nice clones, and so I try to share them here and there, especially if it's a cool person, because I can see just through having done that myself, it really bolsters the scene a lot. And so, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff down here. But when I come over to the States and I get to hang out at the proper facilities, that's where I kind of get re-energized and get filled with inspiration to come back and try to do big things over here.
Yeah, nothing quite beats the West Coast for production, that's for sure.
Yeah, or just even be able to like walk down the street holding a bong. Like it's just such like, such just like a foreign world to me. Like I remember I was with Mr. Bob Hemphill and we were at Santa Cruz and we were down by the beach and we are just sitting on like a chair down by the beach, just ripping bong hits of Skelly. Oh, it was like such an awesome memory. And the thing though was like there was lots of people walking by and they weren't even like looking at us like being like, are they really doing that? Like they literally were just walking along, like they didn't even look at us. Like we were just so low on their priority list. You know what I mean? It was just such a normalized thing. And I was just like sitting there just like kind of giggling inside / thinking the cops are going to rock up any moment just from like what I'm used to. So yeah, it's good. Like obviously seeing the plants is fantastic, but just the culture, like it's great to just, I remember I was at a bar and I met up with a friend and someone just put some buds on the bar. Yeah, and it was just it's just a different world, it's great.
Yeah, sorry about that. Every now and then my audio is skipping. I'm still having issues here. I actually hooked up a different router. It seems to be much smoother than last week, but still having the occasional issue, so not entirely sure why.
It's pretty good.
That reminds
so what are the different? What are some common strains down in Australia? Like, what are the big ones that everyone, everybody grows, and then what are kind of like the more, connoisseur strains that you maybe see once or twice a year, but maybe you've seen them for a long time? What's kind of the strain scene down there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, to be honest, there's going to be some. I'm not going to be able to please everyone with this answer, so I'm just going to go with like my personal kind of answer here. Typically speaking, it's not like the States whereby you get like a really like kind of where you made that connoisseur reference where it comes around once or twice a year. As far as my experience goes, that's not the case. There's kind of like the beasters, like the equivalent of the beasters, and that's pretty much all anyone has access to. And if you happen to know somebody who grows, you generally have to know them personally because the production in Australia is rather limited, and so like the distribution just never gets out more than like 1 degree of separation. So like maybe the grower has a friend and he sells like a pound to him, but like it'll never get further than that. So it's actually quite hard to come across good weed. However, going back to your question, some of the strains that are well known in Australia, I mean, to be honest, it's really like quite early days. Like there isn't really like notable things. Like, like for example, if you looked at the UK scene and said, oh, cheese, very notable UK strain. Unfortunately, we don't have anything to that degree. There are a few things that have been around for a while that are starting to gain some notoriety. People are probably going to hate on me because I made this one, but Raspberry Mama, in my opinion, is probably regarded as Australia's first clone only. Not that like, and I should clarify that in the sense that there was probably other clones going around and stuff before that, but as far as I can tell, it's kind of, you know, it's been around a while now. A lot of people really like it. It's holding up the test. It's starting to get more dispersed out into the community. People are breeding with it, so it kind of ticks a lot of the boxes. However, in saying that, there's a lot of strains, and most people who grow will have at least one cut that's, you know, pretty cool, and they're probably the only one who's got it. And it's not like, you know, like a clone only level cut, but it's really good. So like there's a lot of people who have bought packs of exotic genetics, have bought packs of Brothers Grimm, have bought packs of Dynasty, and, you know, they've found their keepers in those packs. So you do find nice stuff. In terms of how many of those cuts are clone only, I think that, you know, if I had to guess, in all of Australia, you know, there's probably like less than, say, 25 cuts that would be worthy of the title clone only, so to speak. And then the other thing is there's actually not any imported cuts. I mean, my friend reckons that he's got like a sour diesel cut and a forum cut from the States, but I haven't really seen it. So until I see it, I'm not going to say it's true. So as far as I can tell, there are no cuts that have actually made it here, because it's quite hard to get cuts over here. So a lot of it's from seed.
I know a lot of people that deal in where I've got access to a lot of people in Australia that buy seeds from the United States or Europe, and it's really tough to get them in the country in the first place. That's something that I run across all the time. In fact, yeah, well, I can't go into that too much, but about seeds and such like that. But yeah, all I can say is I do know about several guys in Australia. I've had friends there for over a decade, and it seems like it's hit or miss even be able to get genetics in there. Like you were saying, having a clone ship from the United States, that'd be pretty good. That'd be a pretty good task to pull that one off, from what I understand from the outside.
I got you, man. I got you. We got to send you something over there. I want the Mission Impossible task.
Well, I was gonna say,
Well,
man, I'm happy to break the statute of limitations here and say that on each of my trips, I make an effort, man, and it's failed to be successful.
Yeah.
So what is the hash and concentrate scene, if any, there in Aussie
So
land?
yeah, so it's actually starting to take off a lot, and it's really been done off the backs of, you know, like a kind of a smaller group of people in the community who are really passionate about concentrates. I'll be straight up, I'm not one of those people. I'm more of a flower guy. I love flowers. But that's just me, you know, different folks, different strokes. And so anyway, I've got some friends who are a part of this group I'm referencing who have very much built it. And I wouldn't say that there's such a big concentrate scene that there's like a differentiation between like the solventless crew and all that. Like they're all kind of one. It's all building up. There's definitely like really high quality BHO and stuff in Australia nowadays. We're starting to see some sources and some other stuff like that. Like I believe there's a few people with some closed loop systems which are allowing them to do like a little bit higher quality stuff. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's also like actually a really kind of high quality like bubble hash scene, in that all of the organic guys are really into making bubble hash and then turning it into rosin, just like squeezing it from there. So yeah, that's starting to take off as well. We're just starting to see the first actual presses roll out in Australia. Like there's a few stores now which do have some smaller presses, which have got reasonable force to them. I think before that they were all kind of not quite strong enough to get really optimal results, but certainly not. I haven't seen anyone or seen any stores carrying any of the presses that like I would commonly see in the States, like, you know, the really kind of good ones. Like I remember I was at Skunk VA's house and he had a really nice Sasquatch press, and I've yet to see anything of that quality in Australia, unfortunately.
Okay, well, it's interesting to hear about they're doing the bubble rosin. That's still my favorite at home.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say that's what Steve does.
Yeah, I got a friend, Gerald, shout out, and he makes this stuff he calls turp jerky, and he basically he squeezes, yeah, the bubble hash, and he just ever so slightly enough so you kind of get like it's almost like jerky, but yeah, it's funny.
That's really cool. So what is did you have any other unique things about maybe the cannabis scene in Australia? Do you guys ever do charas or anything like that?
Other people probably do. I mean, I don't. In terms of unique things about the scene, I don't know, like we have Nimbin, which is like kind of good and kind of bad. A lot of people are familiar with it. They kind of sometimes it gets referred to as like the Amsterdam of Australia, loosely speaking. It's kind of like the place you go to get weed. Um, it was once like a really thriving place. Like I think it's kind of died down a lot compared to what it used to be. However, there's still the annual Nimbin Mardi Gras, which is held there, and that's like a big celebration of the cannabis and the culture and everything. So that's really awesome. So I guess maybe a bit of a no-brainer. But if anyone was ever considering coming to Australia, try to line it up around that. And it's a good time of the year. It's like it's not too hot, and it's a good little celebration. And you'd actually be able to get some weed, so that'd work out nicely. But yeah, that's kind of a cool thing, and it's actually on the rise. It's definitely on the rise. I went there about 7 or 8 years ago, and I was much younger, and I actually was real. I didn't find any weed. I struggled, probably partly due to how young I was at the time. Like, I mean, I was over 18 still, but like, when you're older, maybe it gets easier, I reckon. But anyway, having gone much more recently in the most recent few years, it was like there were like people doing dabs and stuff. Like it wasn't like out in the open, just free for all, but it was you could noticeably feel and see that it was more lax, and so that was really positive. And so that kind of ties back to earlier on how I said like there are people who predict that within say 2 or 3 years we may have like something really good going on. And so yeah, like maybe that's it. And so yeah, I definitely encourage everyone to kind of support those events, especially like we have these other events in Australia called the HHI Expos. They're like the Hemp Health and Innovation Expos. And like some people go to them thinking that it's going to be like the Cannabis Cup of Australia, and it's not. It's like, there's no one smoking in public for sure. But it's really worth supporting, because like if you want to have a cannabis, a high times, so to speak, in Australia, like you need to support these type of ground roots events that are going to eventually flourish into that. So yeah, I encourage everyone to support all of those things and check them out and come over around that time if you're ever considering it.
That's a big turnaround from a few years ago, because they were really clamping down on you guys.
Yeah, I know. I had someone from Australia in one of my classes tell me that they were even in certain cities, they had parts per million meters in the sewer, and they were actually finding hydro growers by checking whether the water they were flushing and finding them based on total ppms back to their house in the sewer system.
Yeah, I mean, that could be true. I tend to think that he might have actually mistaken this other thing, which I think I know what might be going on there, where in Australia, they've done a lot of tests on the sewer waters specifically for drug concentrations to figure out like which cities use the most stuff. But I'm not sure they were able to track growers back with it, but they certainly were testing the waters and being like, well, we found this much methamphetamine in the water, so therefore this city, like there's the most meth users and stuff like that.
Yeah, I heard that same story and like a version of that same story a while back. Been a year or two since I heard that. But I've heard about it before.
Yeah, could well be true. I could be mistaken, but yeah, I think I think they're pretty lax in Australia, and that's the other thing I say to people. Like, generally, the police compared to the States, like at least back when things were illegal for you guys, the police here, like they're much more chill, and the penalties are much more chill as well. So it's really like pretty good environment, so to speak. Like I don't complain too much.
Oh, that's good to hear. So it's just maybe people were trying to keep it a secret, that they were so chilled. Yeah.
So
no, I mean they've got that way. I think like all places, right? Where as you've got opioid and meth epidemics on the rise, they're less resources.
That's the same way here too. They're more worried about meth labs and crack dealers than they are about a guy growing 4 plants in his house. As long as he's in his house and not bothering anybody, they kind of got that way in the States and a lot of places too. They're not going out and spending a lot of resources going and finding a guy that smokes pot. They want to keep the meth off the street or from blowing up somebody's neighborhood.
Yeah, that's the way it should be, right?
Right, I agree. Hell yeah. We finally evolved.
Our kids with BHO in their kitchen.
Yeah, well, and that's what always gives us a bad name too. Oh, a cannabis lab blew up today. Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks.
Well, yeah,
we're doing something you don't know what the hell you shouldn't. Yeah,
too many kids, and then thankfully the rosin scene's kind of helped a lot, because this rosin's a lot easier and cheaper to make for people. They can just go buy a hair iron and some wax paper and a wood clamp, and they're off to.
Yeah, you might burn your finger, but you won't blow your face off.
Yeah, so the people that are on the lower on the IQ scale can still make their dabs a lot easier without having to resort to explosive gases.
Insert and squeeze.
Yep. No, but seriously though, like the whole pressing bubble, especially bubble, is such an easy thing. I know it. In Frenchie's method, he just takes his bubble, or his really really fine bubble, and then puts that on between 2 layers of like high grade saran, and heat tolerant, and then rolls it with a hot wine bottle with just below boiling water, and just rolls it in there, and man, does that work well.
Yeah, I want to give that a go.
Yeah, I had a chance to take his class, and he's posted all of it. He actually posted all of it on 420. He posted his whole class. If anyone's interested, you can check it out. Although it's totally worth going to his classes in person because he brings like a whole hash bar. It's freaking awesome.
That's killer.
Yeah, I highly recommend anyone go take his classes. But I had a blast. But yeah, so what kind of insects do you deal with down in Australia? I know what we deal with here in the States, but what are the bugs that people deal with down there?
Yeah, so we're pretty lucky, to be honest. I mean, I'm primarily exclusively indoors. So I kind of have it good in that regard. Like any pest is like my fault, so to speak. But I got a lot of outdoor friends, and they deal with the whole myriad. So it's pretty common in that there's the common denominators, your mites, your aphids, fungus gnats, all those things. I guess the most noticeable thing to mention, however, would be that given growing over here in general is like not as common as in the States or being pursued really to that extent for that many years, we've got like the added advantage of we don't have like resistance in our bugs. So when you spray something with neem oil a few times, generally it's pretty much knocked down, which is really advantageous. And it's something I'm really mindful of both myself, obviously myself, but also like trying to keep an eye out for other people if they do bring clones in, being like, don't be the fucking guy who brings it to Australia, because we are safe at the moment and we need to keep it that way. And I love yeah, I was going to say, I love the fact that like I can kill mites really easily if I happen to get them. And so let's keep it that way.
I'm
Yeah.
sure someone's brought russet mites there already.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm sure there are clones here and people have brought stuff with it. You know what I mean? Like it's just good if everyone would keep that mindset and be like, look, we do have a really awesome situation here because people haven't been doing ineffective avid sprays for 20 years, which has built up resistance. And so, you know what I mean? Like we can just use really nice organic things, maybe a little bit of essential oils in there as well, and they'll be gone, They don't, and we've also got a few companies in Australia which do like biological predators, which is fantastic because for me, like that's such a head of the game thing to have like kind of a scene in its infancy, yet to also have like these companies offering like Persimilis and Californicus and Hypoapsis. It's phenomenal because they just do such a good job, and I'm soil, so it's like boom, perfect answer to any bug problem for me. But likewise, outdoors, you're probably going to get much the same issues that you guys deal with. So, like, your caterpillars, your moths, things like boitress, the rot, the usual. Thankfully, due to our climate, we actually really don't experience PM. It's actually really uncommon to get PM. And if you do, you can kind of deal with it quite easily. I've actually only ever known one person who's ever had PM because typically speaking, the humidity here is too high. I believe PM prefers a lower humidity, and so it's just usually too humid here. Yeah, so normally it's just really doesn't get a grasp, and then likewise we don't get those extreme colds that you guys get. So I think that PM really does well in the cold and dry. So yeah, we don't get that really.
Interesting. Is there anything kind of more unique? I know in Jamaica we had these moths that would lay eggs in the buds, and we'd have these caterpillars in the buds that'd be hollow sometimes and stuff like that, especially in May and June. Do you have anything similar?
To be honest, just due to my limited outdoor experience, I probably there probably is, but I probably am not aware of it. But I mean, a few things that I've encountered indoors that have kind of made me kind of second guess was a lot of people have maybe experienced it themselves, but these things called flower mites, they're really annoying. Yeah, some people haven't experienced them, but basically they're kind of like chill, but they also are willing to wander. And so I initially found them in like just in the top part of my soil, like where I got all the amendments and stuff under the mulch layer. And I'm like, all right, cool, they're just doing their thing. And then I guess they multiplied in population like insanely, and it was kind of worrying. And so they started like kind of wandering, like looking for more substrate basically. And so they would wander up the stems of the plants and onto the leaves and onto the buds. You could tell that they weren't like able to eat anything, like they weren't able to extract any sap, like in like the way that like a bad predator would. So they're literally just wandering around on the plant aimlessly, and then they don't find any food and then they die. And it was starting to become an issue because there was lots of them. And I was just like, what the hell is this thing? And I realized, like, for me, I'm pretty sure it was because I was like grinding up my malt barley, and it was just like too accessible for them, and they were just eating the hell out of it. But this thing, like, yeah, it really wigged me out, and I thought it was something like far worse than what it actually was, and I could have like solved the issue way quicker if I just got onto it. But
I've never
yeah,
heard
it's
of
a tip.
them.
Yeah, check it out. Just Google flower mite. They're really common. And the other thing about them is they're somewhat fast moving. And so if you follow that general rule of thumb of like, oh, it's probably a predator because it's fast moving, I followed that rule myself. And so I was like, yeah, nothing to worry about, fast moving. But yeah, and it wasn't, and it followed that rule. It wasn't a problem insect, but it ended up inadvertently being a problem.
They can cause a whole skin reaction in humans called baker's itch.
Yeah, dude, I experienced that. It was not fun.
Yeah, man, that was nasty. We don't have anything. We don't have any mites that are quite that bad. That sucks.
Well, we don't want them either. So
Yeah, you can keep those.
Absolutely.
Everything in
Those are crazy.
Everything in Australia tries to kill you, man. It was funny. I was an article about how the domestic cats were killing so many reptiles in Australia, and it was like, that's fine. All the reptiles are trying to kill you anyway. Like everything's venomous there, right?
Yeah,
I'm
well,
just
it's
being
like
sarcastic.
I can't remember who made the comparison, but it's like in Australia, everything is really small and wants to kill you. But in the States, everything is really big and wants to kill you. So you guys have got like lions and bears and mountain tigers and just stuff that'll really kill you. But over here, it's like you got to watch out for like this tiny little spider or this tiny little snake that'll get you in the same way.
or a flower mite.
Right?
Yeah.
Man, seriously, we don't have no plant mites that'll actually like give you a skin reaction. Like that's nuts. Like I'm so glad we don't. Man, yeah, keep those there.
They're ugly little boogers.
Oh man.
So do you guys actually have beneficial nematodes? Is that one of the things that's kind of cut off? I know there's different rules, especially for island nations. Is that something that you have in your arsenal?
Yeah, I've used the beneficial nematodes before. There's a company in Australia, if anyone's listening, called Nemesys, and they offer a variety of nematodes that specialize for different things. I've used the one specifically for fungus gnats. Very effective. Couldn't recommend it enough. Really good product. Yeah. However, the one thing I would add is I personally think that hypoapsis might be a little bit more effective in the long term, just because what I found was I did a little rough side-by-side trial, and I found that like over the long term, and this could just be totally random, but like the pot that I gave the nematodes to, that actually ended up having like a fungus gnat issue come back a little sooner than the other one. And so like my rationale was maybe I was able to somehow sustain the hypoapsis a little more longer, and so that like they were there ready to fight off that infection again. But I don't know. I would recommend them either way. I'm just trying to personally figure out which one is going to stay in the soil for the longest after I've initially solved it. So, it's going to continue to be effective, so to speak.
Feed them some of those flower mites.
You love them ones. Hey, I'm just going to keep getting this one thrown at me all day.
Sorry about that.
It's a scary idea, man. We're all scared of that.
Yeah. So, Mr. Green Jeans, do you have any questions? Is the whole breeding podcast?
Yeah, I missed most of the end of that. It sounds really cool. I was really interested in the idea of breeding hermaphrodites, which it's like I definitely think it's possible. It's the kind of thing you know what you're doing. You can do it. And,
yeah, well, I think like the most obvious example, right, is if you look at Neville's, the seed company, like his first company, or like SSC. Actually, no, sorry, I don't think SSC offered it. But if you look at the early companies that were offering Thai, they're very upfront about the fact that like some of the population was hermaphroditic, and so you
It
can
was
only
anyway,
assume,
right?
yeah, and so like
A lot of that
this,
Southeast Asian genetics. In fact, both Mr. Green Jeans and I both have worked with a lot of that. They're super high hermaphroditic percentage.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so like what my thinking was is that like people regard that as some of the best stock on earth, and he outright says like we had to breed this for 4 generations to get it down. Like the truth is the first seeds he got of those ties were probably Hermy. And so he probably did exactly what we're talking about. Like he bred with Hermy plants and did like a goal and reduced it down over generations to the point where maybe it's now only herming like 10% of the time. And that was what was offered as like the F4 tie from the seed bank or whatever.
Yeah. And and you're just saying, there's a percentage of them, so look out for that, and you have to be hip to that. And I think that, I think it's to be
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah. I mean, it's to be
and it's
expected.
actually,
Like,
yeah,
well, I was talking to this guy and we were talking about like just the idea of do-si-do in theory. And it was like if anyone complained about a Hermy from a pack of do-si-do, like you'd have to be kidding yourself because it's like it's OG cross cookies, right? Like you're really going to complain about 1 or 2 Hermies in a pack, like
exactly, it's well known, and it's worth the and all the reason to plant more seeds too. Exactly. This is what I'm always telling people. I mean, with certain seed batches, a seed batch that's really similar to each other, like feminized seeds or something like that, doesn't have much variation. You plant a few seeds and get the whole thing. But other things, you should plant more to see what kind of a span you've got going. Get a good
yeah.
look,
Well,
buddy. That's a perfect example. If you've got 10 to 25% hermaphrodites, then you've got to plant enough plants to get you know what I mean, to rogue those ones out, if that's what you're going to do. Or maybe even you're not. Maybe you're going to use the pollen from them or something.
yeah,
But
well,
yeah.
I thought about this a lot because for 2 reasons. Like, A, as a breeder, I wanted to think to myself, like, what's a good answer to give to people when they say, how many seeds should I pop to be confident? Or like people will message me just in regards to the podcast and be like, oh, you probably know the answer to this. How many seeds should I pop? Like, I want to do my own breeding project or something like that. And so I kind of like really thought about this long and hard and thought, what is the correct answer to this? And what I basically was able to find was that generally speaking, there is obviously the 1 in 100,000 phenos or whatever, like, that whole cherry AK thing from Serious Seeds or whatever. Like, yep, okay, that's cool. But generally speaking, the lowest occurrence of phenotypes you get that's generally regarded as true is about 5%. You really like anything lower than that is kind of like more of like a lotto ticket winning thing. So you can get, but a lot of people will agree that you can get strains where you get like about a 5% occurrence of a certain pheno, but you don't really get lower than that. So with that in mind, if you pop 20 seeds, you're going to see that. However, it could be a male or it could be a female. You could get 20 different 5% phenos. So realistically, you actually need to pop 40 seeds, and then that way you'll guaranteed get at least 1 male and 1 female of every pheno, even if it only occurs 5% of the time. So
That's great advice.
having done that, I was like, I'm really happy with that answer, because you know what I mean? Like, it's like you'll see what you need to see. There's statistically, you're not going to miss anything, so to speak. And it's also like a pretty good number. Like, I think most people would say like, yeah, 40 seeds is like, if you wanted to find a male, 40 seeds is a good number to start with.
Totally. I tell people that that's the good reason. The reason to plant a lot of plants is not so much to be looking for this super special plant, because often, the super unusual plant doesn't even breed exactly, or at least it doesn't necessarily kick exactly what it looks like. And the goal is not so much that of the goal is to really see a lot of variations and to understand, you know what I mean, a lot of things about the population. That's the real reason to grow a lot of plants. Of course, you're gonna choose, 2 or 3 females and 2 or 3 males probably, or whatever. But still, it's good to look at a lot of plants as a breeder. That's the whole thing. It's not so much selective pressure that, especially not nowadays, where you could be growing something that double or triple hybrid has a whole bunch of great drug strains behind it, generations, and there's a lot of good stuff in there, you know. So hard for you to even use the plants. 40 plants is a lot. Whoa. But it's great
Yeah.
to have.
I was going to throw in that I thought you were going here, but you didn't. That because when you said, well, it's not because you start 40 seeds. Well, partially you're saying you don't start 40 seeds necessarily to get a yield from 40 seeds either. You're going to look at the characteristics of all the phenos and then see what, like you said, the population does
for breeding.
Together.
Yeah.
For breeding. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's both of you guys. That's really great advice for people out there that they're always asking about breeding. This would be a great show to refer them to. I love that explanation you gave too about the 40 plants to get what you want, what you wanted,
Yeah, and just to even tie back into the point you just made, if you do this 40 seed hunt, you'll find your male, so to speak, and then theoretically, let's just say for argument's sake, you get 20 males, 20 females out of these 40 seeds, just so it's easy numbers.
Exactly.
Of those 20 males, you're probably going to cull down to just one. So you're not even going to necessarily run 40 seeds. You know what I mean? Like it's going to very quickly, you'll start pruning ones off that are obviously not what you're looking for pretty quickly. So it's not as daunting of an endeavor as it may seem. And I've done it before and I find it gets really nice results. And it gives you a way in which you can stand behind what you're saying and not just feel like you've arbitrarily picked a number, and you can be confident. You can be like, well, look, man, the math is behind my argument. So it's that simple.
It's fantastic. I think it's the most, I think it's, really great, important for people in branding. I think there should be a lot of, there should be genetic, and people who are making concentrates and food and things like that, which are a great way to, edibles are a great way to brand also, but it's great for them to connect themselves with known unique genetics. They want to, you know what I mean? They want to be able to say, yeah, my edibles are made from this guy's flower, things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think genetics is a really important part of branding in cannabis.
I feel like it's almost everything in a way. Like, I mean, Jungle Boy is maybe the one exception to the rule, but even they rely on their genetics. Like, and that's what I think in a way. Like, I think by cultivating genetics, you almost foster brands around that, because people smoke strains and they start loving it, and then all of a sudden someone makes a shirt for that strain and it just goes from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Put a shirt over it. Make a shirt. I've never heard that before.
I was going to ask, what nutrients or amendments do you have available? I'm sure there's different stuff than what we have available here, and you sound like you're pretty sharp on what we have available. You mentioned build a soil earlier, and I'm just curious what you're working with.
Me too.
Yeah. So excuse me. Generally speaking, there's pretty much everything you guys have, except for a very small number of things. But even then, you can kind of circumnavigate that. Like, for example, as far as I know, there's no really abundant source to get like crustacean meal in Australia, like really good, high quality, pure crustacean meal. However, you can order it from the States. Like, you're not technically meant to, but like, every now and again, one of them gets through, I guess. And so I know some friends who have got it that way. But other than that, there's pretty much everything. So, like we've got like neem, alfalfa, kelp, insect frass, all like high quality compost, peat, like pretty much everything. I'm just trying to think, like we've even got like amino acid products, like obviously not the same brands as the ones in the States. Like I believe Thriven is like a well-known brand in the States. We don't have that brand, but we've got other ones, and I believe they're like pretty close to on par. And pretty much everything. We don't have available bone meal, which is such a weird one, right? You'd be like, what? Like bone meal? Yeah, it's like, and we have so much, like we make so much livestock in Australia and like make lots of meat and stuff, so it's just such an obvious thing to do, but just there hasn't been any demand for it as far as I can tell, and so no one's just really doing it, and so that'd be cool to see that happen. But outside of that, pretty much everything, yeah, I guess the big difference is like, and I feel like that's what's really helped bolster the Australian scene is the fact that people are now growing with a lot of the exact same things that the top organic guys in the States are growing with. And so that's really just, like really improved the outcome of the end product greatly, because there are a lot of people who will say to you things like, oh, I've been growing with Blood and Bone for years and now I use this neem and kelp and oyster shell and blah, blah, blah. And I'm get way better results. And it's like, yeah, I know. So it's good. It's like the organic scene here is really thriving, and I'm just so grateful because I'm just so passionate about organics. And I'm like really like not the type of person who wants to like dictate any particular grow style, so to speak. I'm more of like here's the things you can use and use them however you see fit.
Right.
Yeah, and so I just think it's fantastic that there's all these options available, that there is an increased awareness, and that more importantly, I don't know if this has been said on your guys' show, but I made the point on mine the other day that these days, organic, indoor, no-till is synonymous for the highest quality. And that just like makes me so happy that that's true. Like that the everyday consumer knows that, like, even in Australia, at least it's the case, that indoor, organic, no-till, that goes for the highest dollar because it's the best. And that just makes me happy inside.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. I mean,
Oh, there you go.
I mean, we all know this, a lot of this information wasn't readily available even 2 or 3 years ago. I kind of joke with people that, some of the people that are kind of the bigger names that, in quotes, in the no-till scene are like bragging about 6th cycle, 10th cycle, whatever it is, you know what I mean? That's only a couple of years that, this stuff has really been getting out there in the media. And so that's cool, man. Very cool.
Can you answer a question for me, Heavy? I years ago, it's funny because I was just thinking, well, I learned a technique I tried here that worked pretty well called the no dig grow bed. What do you compare that or is it the same thing as no till, or what's the difference between a no dig grow bed and a no till?
Yeah, I've actually read about no dig, so I can answer this one.
I did that, so it's cool. I'd love to hear this.
Yeah. So they're kind of similar. I guess the difference is no-till would be a little more involved, so to speak, in terms of the inputs. In that, I guess, like generally speaking, if you're not familiar with no-till and you looked at the widely used inputs and you were looking at buying them individually, you might kind of be like, what the hell are all these random things? Whereas the no dig method is more of like a conventional agricultural method. Like that's where I read about it in like more of a standard like farming agricultural book.
Oh,
And
well, see, okay. The one I learned was there were 7 layers of different organic matter in there, from sand to like these weeds. I can't. I'm sorry. I haven't thought about this in a long time. It just came up tonight. But he had weeds in there, some kind of, I can't. Like I said, there was 5 different layers. It was a layered thing, which I thought might be similar to no-till. But I
think you're thinking of a hugel bed. I think is what you're thinking of. Josh, correct me if I'm wrong. Sounds like a hugel bed is described.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, these terms get really confusing. No-till is really a term from traditional agriculture, and like most of the, people don't understand this, but most of the GMO corn that we eat is no-till. That's how they grow it now. It's widely accepted, and in our cannabis, I mean, you've said it totally right, Heavy. It's this. There's a standard amendments in the standard kind of way, and people deviate, and we talk about it. That's kind of been my thing, is really getting into the details of it. And the conference I put on was kind of joking about the idea. Like, I made a really long name, the Science of Organic Regenerative Cannabis Cultivation Conference, to kind of like bring out that idea that there's so many different, sectors of this no-till game, or this organic living soil game, that I don't know, we should talk about it and get into it. Like, I'm super a dork about it.
I think it's probably very similar, and again, it's different techniques that happen in different areas of the world and by different farmers. So I think it's pretty much.
I was just gonna ask how much KNF is in the scene.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, I kind of like need to fess up here. I just kind of interchangeably use it all together. In that, I mean, as much as I acknowledge where things come from and whatnot, to me, it's all kind of just organics. And when I say no-till, I just mean like true organics. You're growing with soil amendments. You're not using like entirely bottle fed in the cocoa system or something like that. You know what I mean? Because there are some companies which kind of try to pull the wool over your eyes with calling it organic in that regard. So I guess generally what I refer to, generally speaking, and it ties back to that point I said about not wanting to dictate the way people grow. Like I'm the type of person who's like, you could use these methods, which I guess originate from, quote, the no-till method, but you can also incorporate these ferments, which come from KNF, and it's just, I just see no reason why not to mix the two techniques together. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of my
That's how I
stance.
think
So
it should grow. Yeah.
yeah. So I guess generally speaking, I would say that there isn't a dedicated scene in Australia to one or the other. There's just organics. So like pretty much everyone uses little things from everything, and and people use a ferment here and there, and they use like an aerated tea here and there, and they use just like a foliar feed of some aloe water here and there. Like so, it's kind of like just using a bit of everything. But I guess the beauty is, we very much are standing on the shoulders of giants in that we can, we see what has worked in the States, and like we've only come online recently, so to speak. So when people start looking at this stuff, they can just look at this really phenomenal stuff, and people have already been there for years being like, this is what I used to grow it. So now that we're finally actually on the ball with doing that, you get really good results basically.
Well, that was a good explanation of the no-till, what you were saying. And that's similar to what I think this no-dig grow bed was too. I think that's probably very similar because he built it up. He used compost and all the alfalfa and stuff like that. And so I do remember kind of, a little bit, but I think that is the way people are going. And like I personally have always taught, and our website's big about this, we have a phenomenal blog section with over 500 or 600 articles. And, some people get confused because we write these articles and it's doing exactly what you were saying. The articles are written to give you an idea of how to grow. We're not saying you have to use this method. So down the road, you might read an article that kind of contradicts that, but it's not, you got to choose which way you want to go,
Yeah.
Isn't that what you're saying? The way you,
Yeah, definitely. I would rather explain to someone how neem works than to say like you have to use this much in this application only.
or you might say, don't you, well, see, you love neem oil and I'm not a big fan of it, but I do know it has a place.
Well,
So
here's a question. Have you heard about the linkage of neem oil to what's the name of the vomiting syndrome?
Cannabis hyperemesis. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've actually got a medical background in terms of my day job, so I can kind of give a bit of insight into this one. So basically, just to quickly reference, when I just made that comment there, that was actually about neem cake, not neem oil. I'm not so much a neem oil person myself. I mean, I use it, but I'm a big fan of neem cake. So just so everyone knows, use neem cake.
okay, cool.
Anyway, neem oil. So basically, in terms of if you look at the actual published literature on cannabis hyperemesis and in terms of the suspected, so when you look at neem oil, it's actually the one specific subcomponent azodactrin, not even the nimbin, which is the other regarded active component within neem oil. So there's two components within neem oil that are considered active, and so it's only one of them, and it's the azodactrin. It's been suspected that azodactrin has a linkage to cannabis hyperemesis. However, the problem is that the recorded literature has people being admitted to the emergency room after mistakenly drinking, say, 10 to 20 mils of neem oil. Not a lot. However, at that much, you will actually get some pretty bad side effects. Most notably, you can get a lot of shaking, a lot of vomiting, which obviously ties into the cannabis hyperemesis thing. However, the evidence which says that people got it from smoking cannabis which had been sprayed with neem oil, which was therefore volatilizing azodactrin, it's a less tangible link to follow. And so there is a few articles on it which have been loosely written, but the problem is that there is almost an equal number of articles where basically the outcome is different, whereby in one article they'll say, we suspect it's from the weed, we recommend you discontinue smoking that weed because it's poisonous and it should stop. And in those studies, the cannabis hyperemesis stops. So that's one thing to consider. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's other people who continue to smoke the exact same weed that they suspect they've been poisoned from, and the cannabis hyperemesis goes away. And then finally, there's people who stop smoking weed, but the cannabis hyperemesis doesn't go away. And so the literature isn't clear enough that you could actually indicate it. And as far as I'm concerned, it's basically anecdotal at best because, like, I'll be honest, I actually thought I had cannabis hyperemesis for a period of time many years ago. And I was one of the people who continued to smoke the exact same weed that theoretically would have been poisoning me. And ultimately, it ended up clearing up. You know, there can be some debate about whether I actually had this thing or not. A lot of people who were around me at that time period think like, yeah, dude, you definitely had it. Like, it was like pretty full on. But basically what I think is that the link is not proven yet, and it's really quite anecdotal at this point. And as far as I can tell, like, I know a lot of people who have continued to smoke weed even when they would recommend you stop smoking weed, and it still clears up. So to me, it's like, well, how does that work then? Like, where's the poison coming from?
Can I ask, has there been any correlation between, like, when you said you smoked part of it, like, that it was all about the inconsistency of the application of neem oil on plants and such like that, and saturation, and
Yeah, like
million
if it
and all
was,
that, and maybe it was on one bud, so you got sick, and then you smoked the rest of the plant, and it didn't have that. Do you think that's possible or correlation?
Was a lot
yeah, I certainly think that
press.
that would have a huge variability, right? Like if a plant got sprayed at the start of flower versus the end, you know, like obviously that would have a huge variation. But the thing about neem is actually a systemic ingredient in it actually, you know, like PM, it gets into the plant. And so it's not just about surface exposure, because there is a degree of neem which gets into the plant. My opinion is that it's not toxic or dangerous, and so that doesn't matter. However, like, it is worth noting that it is actually permeable and uptaken to a small degree. I believe it's like 2% of what you spray on the plant will actually be uptaken into the systemic system.
Okay.
So yeah,
So-
so I guess what I'm trying to say is, even if one bud did happen to cop it a bit more than the other, there is still going to be a certain amount of neem oil within the whole plant overall.
I think the biggest issue they're seeing in the States is the fact that so many people smoke concentrates, and when you smoke concentrates, you can also concentrate the residue on the surface of the plant as well. And I think that's
Yeah.
some of
That's
the
a whole
issues.
different kettle of fish as well. Yeah, so that would I would be very very inclined to believe that you could get something from that, because yeah, you know, it's essentially acting like an accumulator.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
but I mean, at the same
yeah.
time, I think it's also just worth noting that, like, a lot of people will admit that when they go through these periods, they were smoking quite heavily at the time. Sometimes they'll back off and it helps. I just think, like, it's also worth noting that, like, sometimes you do need to watch your usage, and just, you know, sometimes you got to take a step back, and sometimes you're just in a certain spot in your life mentally and physically, and things can affect you in different ways. And it's just worth considering that before we all jump to the conclusion that neem oil is toxic, like, you know, inherently, and that it should never be used. Because I think, you know, kind of like what Roger said at the start, it's got a place and a use. My opinion is I would never be using it in flour. It's just that simple. But you know what I mean? Like, that's not like, I don't want to demonize it at the same time.
Oh, I love that, though, that you clarified that, because there you go. Thank you. That, for all you students out there, that's right. Never use it in flour. There you go. Clarification.
Yeah, so that's what I think, like, the situation with neem is. But I don't know. I think it's like, I think a lot of organics things, like, it's hard to find faults with them, and I think neem oil might be one of those things where, like, it's something people can point to and, you know, try to discredit organics or like the application of it. And I think it's also related to the fact that we have such limited options within organics for IPM treatments. Neem is kind of like heavily relied on, and like we should really start looking to other things. Like, you know, we've already mentioned the predator mites, and I think everyone can probably agree that they're like a really good option, certainly less danger than what may occur with neem oil.
That's
Really
true. Yeah.
effective. A lot of
Go ahead.
people they use.
I was gonna say water close to harvest. You know what I mean? It just if you have container plants, you can just tip them upside down in the water. Although I'm not sure whether that would also harm the predator mites as well.
Heat treatments. I was actually just talking to Josh and Kelly about this. I don't know if I can't remember if they mentioned it on your show or not, but we were texting back and forth. I've heard them talk about it, and doing heat treatments of like up to 120 for a couple hours can knock off a lot of a lot
Right.
of the pests. Even they can take care of the PM too. And my question to them was like, because I'm actually going to do it. I have some pests that I'm worried about, and I'm about to harvest part of my greenhouse, but I need to treat the whole thing and do something for the other part too. And so I'm going to do this heat treatment. And my concern was the terps. What's going to happen to these volatile terps on these plants? And so I'm open to
Well,
hearing
good
what
point.
anybody says about
That's a
that.
good
But
question there.
Do you
Josh and
have
Kelly seemed to they were pretty confident that it wasn't going to be a problem, and it kind of makes sense to me because the plant is continuing to grow and it's producing more terps, and as it's burning them off, they're coming again, and it's only a short period of thing, and the plants actually do love being really hot.
Yeah.
So I just love to hear if you guys have any thoughts on it. Anybody?
Well, there's a couple different terpenes that would be burned off at 120, but it's not many.
Well, do you feel like they would regenerate, Steve? Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, they'll regenerate, but at the same time, it's you're gonna smell whatever's burning off pretty quick.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that you'd certainly lose a lot, because the thing is you get like partial volatilization. So like, even let's just say, like, for argument's sake, a terpene volatilizes at 100 degrees. Even when you're below that, you're still going to have a certain percentage of it volatilizing. Just like, like, it doesn't have to be 100 degrees for the water to evaporate off a bowl if it's out in the sun. You know what I mean? And so if it gets to that point, which Steve just mentioned, like, you would be losing all of that terpene, not just some of it. And then the ones above it, you would lose some of that, but not all of it. But the thing is that glandular trichomes are insulated by nature. And
Yep.
so they're very much going to contain the majority of it, because, as we're all aware, it's not until you really brush the heads do you actually get the
I was going
bulk
to say that.
terpene.
Good point. Good point. Very good point. The trichomes are.
And
Well, it's
also,
like I would never consider doing it to a cut flower, right? But I'm nervous about it. I mean, it sounds like I'm like, fuck, I don't want to burn anything off. This flower's looking really good, and like, maybe I just need to hold on the ride. It's only 2 weeks, and so that's kind of the decision I'm in.
well, what you could do is you can actually do a lot of things to really help that. So first of all, well-watered plants will close their stomata. And so basically, if you water the plants really well right before you do it, they're going to transpire far less, which is going to help in general. And then on top of that, if you gave them like a foliar spray with a surfactant, that's going to really help. So like, my favorite one is like saponins. Like, you get them from like either Pure or like Soap Nuts, or like however you want to get them.
Just don't
And,
use them in. Hold on, don't never use those in aquaponics. Just be forewarned. Okay.
Okay. Out of curiosity, they are harmful to the plants?
Instantly
Fish.
kill your fish. Instantly kill your
Wow.
fish.
I had
It's
no
all about
idea.
keeping the fish alive, Heavy. You got to keep the fish alive.
Yeah, I'll have to rethink that one. Is that because of the glycoside nature of it all, or like, do you know what it's like just toxic to them?
I don't know the exact compound in it. Actually, I know that the Native Americans here in California used to actually make a concentrate from yucca root and actually pour it into streams, and then have the other part of the village downstream to collect all the fish to eat. It's super, super, super lethal, and even tiny doses. It's one of the handful of things in organics that people have to watch out for.
Yeah, and you also want to watch out inhaling that stuff as well. I'll mention that. Because like, when you look at the structure of the molecule, it very much resembles a common structure called a cardiac glycoside, which is quite toxic.
Yippers.
Yeah, but okay, well, maybe we won't use saponins in that instance, but you could get some aloe extract and just, spray that on the plants first, and that's going to again provide an extra layer of insulation. And given what Josh and Kelly said about, I think they only said to do it for like, I think they said how long? Like, it was like an hour or something.
They said 2 to 3 hours, and
yeah. So within that time frame, like, I wouldn't want to do it a few days before harvesting, but if you've got a few weeks, I see no reason why the plant couldn't adequately reproduce the terpenes that were lost, so to speak, in that very brief 2 to 3 hour period, assuming they had, sufficient sulfur and, all the necessary precursor molecules they'd want to make them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
don't
kind of
think.
what I've done. I was gonna hit them. I was actually gonna do it tomorrow and get up early and water them real hard and spray them down with just. I was gonna just spray them with water, and and see what happens. But
Well, you have a heater or something to crank the heater.
I'm in a greenhouse, so I just close it up and
Yep.
that'll do it.
That's what I was going to say. All I have to do is shut the fans off, and it'll be 120 in 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's real easy with that.
Or more. Yeah. Or pull the shade cloth back. Sorry.
We'll see. I'll let you know. I can smell those flowers now, so I'll let you know after I'm done if they don't smell as strong.
Well, the bottom line is you either do. We're talking about killing bugs and pests, right?
Is there any buds on there that are ready to be picked? The real question would be to do a
Well, it's
side-by-side
not even
cut.
as much. I mean, I have a large crop, right? So I'd throw away the part that's damaged. It's I'm trying to stop the spread.
Good deal.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's that's for kind of back to what we were saying about using in neem or any of these tools. For instance, there's a place to use them, and it made I saw a little powdery mildew, so I sprayed some stuff on it. I'm in flower. I'm not going to smoke that or sell that, but I wanted to stop the spread of the spores, so I did a spot spray, and then I just cut all that material down, and compost it.
If you're in a grow and you're totally going to sacrifice that plant or plants in that area, and you're just trying to keep the spores from spreading in your grow while you're bringing them outside, you can actually spray them down real good with hairspray. Glue all the things down. I know a couple of places. It's cheap and it works really good.
Aquanet.
What do you think about you couldn't if you're going to waste it, you could coat it with baking soda mix solution too, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, you just want the spores to stay on the plant and not fall off.
I thought they would once you soak them down with the baking soda, it would pretty much.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing too. You could always just take the plants and immediately dip them in like a trash can with high pH, like you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what baking soda does. Everybody, if you don't know, it's a very high pH, and mold can't live or mildew can't live in a high pH environment.
Yep.
I believe it's
if you got mold on the side of your mildew on the side of your house and you're painting, put some.
Here's a question. What do you guys think of Jorge Cervantes' wash the PM off the buds thing? You guys ever seen that?
The peroxide?
Cool.
The peroxide bath.
Oh yeah, that's no good, man. I tried that first run when I was 10 years ago, and that was never again happening.
Yeah. Curious to see what y'all
I thought it was pretty interesting though, because he got he got it all to float to the surface. So I mean, and I've given plants a shower before after at the end of the grow, and then I put 1 million fans on them and dried them out and never had a problem. But I don't know. I've never done that particular bath with the hydrogen peroxide. So,
Yeah, I did it once, and it was really detrimental to the buds. And
all right.
And I remember I did it because I was at a friend's house, and he was just showing me these things, and I was like, man, I don't know what to do. But totally ruined the buds on every level. And then looking back on it with some kind of better insight into the whole situation. PM is a systemic disease, and so it's not you know what I mean. It's just you're treating the symptom, not the cause. It's still there. So
right, but I mean, I actually haven't had PM for a long time. It's crazy that I have it. I'm kind of getting used to working in the greenhouse, but so I treated the symptom with compost tea. And as I started to see it come out, and I was just gonna kind of let it roll, and then it got to be where it was just kind of getting worse on this one plant, and yeah.
The other thing you can do too is you can hit them especially if it's still in veg and it's early. You can hit them really hard with Bacillus sabilis, big dose on the roots, and then spray just give it a real good foliar spray. The cheapest way to do this, if any of you guys are. You guys probably are familiar with the product Serenade. They sell it in a lot of hydro stores. You can actually make that stuff a lot cheaper if you go to your farm store and you get the chicken probiotic. It comes in the little packets. Usually they sell it by the register. You can also buy it in huge amounts. And it's super dirt cheap, and it's basically powdered Bacillus sabilis in a super concentrated form. And it's great for just bombing a plant. Bacillus sabilis loves to feed on that. So does lactobacillus ferments. If you're doing labs, that's another one that just loves to plow through it.
Bacillus subtilis. That's a good one. Okay. Lactobacillus and Bacillus subtilis.
It's like a tongue
Great
twister.
tip. Yeah.
Trying to remember. That's all about trying to remember. Bacillus subtilis. Sounds like a evil twin of what's her name in 101 Dalmatians.
The other thing you could also try is just swinging the pH. So if you do like a low pH water spray to a high pH water spray and you alternate, especially for squash and stuff like that, it can be just enough to get rid of it. On this, at least on that, if it's just starting to take over, before you after you remove the infected leaves, you can kind of spray the leaves near it.
Oh, there you go.
And you're recommending you only spray the leaves, right?
Well, you got to get it everywhere. And again, like he was saying,
Okay,
it is
okay. That's why I wanted to ask that.
systemic, but it's locally systemic until it totally gets into the main system. So just because you have it on one or two leaves doesn't mean it's totally through the whole plant. But if it's on a whole branch or something like that, or towards the main stalk, then yeah, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
Would you disagree with that, or?
No, I've heard Mr. Bob Hemphill say that that's essentially how he beats PM in old cuts. Like he'll just batter it down and keep it localized, and then try to allow like a few shoots to grow and remain issue free, and then take cuttings exclusively of that new growth, and then maybe even repeat that process once or twice. And he says that if you can do it properly over 1 or 2 periods of time, that's how you can really beat PM.
That's how you beat a lot of things. You just have to treat it and wait for the new growth. That's a mistake a lot of growers make. New growers make is that they don't realize that it's the bad leaves aren't going to come back. Once they're bad. But I mean, light green leaves you can make dark green, but that's about it, I think. Right? So it's really important to know that you always want to watch for that new growth, and like you said, you take cuttings, in fact, too, yeah, and move on.
Indica Dogo says they're working on at New Mexico Tech. They're working on a mycology or a mycological product that prevents PM.
Oh. It wouldn't surprise me, given like the existence of Bacillus Thirgenesis Israelis. That one for it's essentially like a predator bug, but you know what I mean? Like it's getting to that same level of specificity and on that same microorganism level.
Oh yeah, I think the individual microbes, and then even look at things like mammoth P. Getting into Australia recently, just the things to facilitate more phosphorus uptake. And you're gonna see that with other nutrients pretty quick.
Yeah, well, we've already got a few basic versions of Mammoth P that are just like, some just 2 or 3 microbes mixed together. They may even be in Mammoth P, but I've always felt they did a pretty good job. And I look at the price point of Mammoth P, and I'm just like, no thanks.
I was going to say, I think silica also. When the plant's getting enough silica, that helps. I think it's harder for them to get PM when their walls are. I mean, it's not going to prevent it completely, but it's harder for it to take hold.
For example, at Ken's farm at Ouroboros, the whole right behind us, there's a farmer in the greenhouses that is just covered his zucchini and cucumbers that were covered in PM a couple months ago, and right in the spring, really bad. Have absolutely nothing in the system got it on our side, on his side of the farm, because the silica is dialed in, the calcium's dialed in, the magnesium is growing real fast. Healthy plants got a healthy immune system and can fend off a lot of this stuff as long as they're got what they need.
Yeah, for sure. And like you can even go to that next step of like having a fungal dominant soil is going to be more beneficial to the immune system. Yeah, undoubtedly.
Oh yeah, and I did a lot of work with silica levels in aquaponics. But yeah, it's a really funny how a lot, silica still to a lot of people isn't even considered to be a nutrient for plants, and we've discovered how much it's super important for heat stress and insect resistance and mold resistance and all kinds of things.
Yeah, totally, totally. And that's why I like using rice hulls for aeration because like it's just really nice source of silica.
Oh yeah, it's the best for organic stuff. You use the biochar or just the regular?
Yeah, I mean, I like biochar, but my experience has been like the more, how can I phrase this nicely? The more well built your soil, the less benefit you get from it. Like if you've got a really poor soil and you add biochar to it, you're probably going to see huge improvements immediately. But if you've got a really high end soil, because this is the thing I often think about, like this is, at least in my point of view from where I'm at, this is a hobby for me where I'm willing to spend a good amount of money on it because it's my hobby. I go hard on it. It's not about, like, I mean, in some regards there's price points, but you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like I'm willing to spend a little bit extra on it. Oh, excuse me. And so like kind of in that regard, I figure like why not? And so I've got a really well built soil. I've got absolutely everything in there. And so at that point, I figure like the biochar, like it's trying to stop some nutrients from leaching out, and it's providing some water retention and some aeration and some things like that. But for the most part, like I've already got a lot of the characteristics, like I've already got ample nutrients in there. And so what I tend to find is that like I'm using it less and less as time goes by because like my soil is just kind of where it needs to be already. However, if anyone came to me and said like, oh, I've got a much bigger scale project where like money would immediately become a factor, I would immediately recommend biochar because as far as I can tell, biochar and cover crops seem to be pretty much the way to do things on scale cheaply because otherwise it becomes cost prohibitive.
And I don't know if there's a limit on how much biochar you can put in there. You're like, no, you
I've
really
heard
don't.
50%.
15% exactly. You don't really ever
No,
want to.
so I've heard 50.
Oh, I've heard
Yeah.
15.
I've used it, I
And
think, in a very high concentration too. Like, I don't know, about 50%.
I used it
wasn't
at
bad.
1, 3, and 5% half acre, and it did nothing. But the rice husk biochar I found works really good
I
for
think it
as an
sucks
amendment.
nutrients out if you know. My
if you don't
theory
charge
is
it,
that if you put it in really rich soil, exactly, if you don't
Well,
pre-charge it, it's going to actually take nutrients out of the soil a little bit. So especially in really good soil. So
I
if you
think
put it in really nice soil, you're going to kind of reduce your nutrients almost some because it's going to go into the biochar like a battery. But
I think that's what Heavy was saying. If you've got really good soil, then you don't
yeah,
need it. But if you got poor
it
soil, you're
seems
trying to rebuild it. It's a good start, right?
probably good. Yes. Also, it really sucks a lot of water, so you have to be really careful to make sure it's completely. Well, you have to water anything really carefully. If you're going to use like something with 30% biochar, you got to really caution against making sure that it's well soaked. In the
I can't
container.
remember what I was a university study that I found that in. I can't quote it, but that's where I went off because I built all, I have a 30 by 96 greenhouse. It's, I don't know how many, there's like 33 yards, I think, of soil I mixed last year. No till, from scratch, and there's rice holes in it, and I did 15% worm casting charged by biochar. It was worm tea charged, and they let it sit. And there's actually a biochar, black owl biochar here in the area I live, Bellingham, Washington, and they're kind of on the cutting edge of this stuff, and then she was right on board with that. So
I think it
I don't
allows
know
you to
about the
use more
30%, but
water.
that was my
I
deal.
think I can. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it allows you to use a lot of water, or even if the plant's not very big and in a large container, if it has, and this is, I'm just talking about containers. It allows you to give a great deal of water, and even if there's a fair amount of organic nutrient in the soil, I don't think it will, kind of sour or make beer. The biochar seems to, I think, protect against that. So I think you could use almost like a submerged, almost like a semi-hydroponic system if you had a lot of biochar in there and still have a lot of organic nutrient in there that's decomposing and doing its thing. But I think the bio, I don't know. It's just my
Well, and
theory. It
I'm
seems to be
maybe
the way
we're
it looks when I'm using it.
maybe we're not talking about the same. Using it the same way. Like mine is mixed
No.
in. It's not a top dress that So I don't know if because
Oh,
it's
yeah,
if you're top dressing, it's like slowly leaching in, right? Versus like I
No,
have it
no, I'm
mixed.
blending it. I'm blending it right into my soil mix, and and I just have been throwing it in, haphazardly. But I know I've done up to 30%, not 50%. But I don't doubt that you could. I think it would be a good idea to try and pre-charge it first. To soak it in some really strong teas or something like that, and because I've already kind of done a few experiments with that, and definitely it will I'm not using this by the same stuff you guys are using. I'm just using regular hardwood charcoal that I bought a
Right.
bag of, and I'm actually crunching it up into small pieces and
So
using it like that, and it's fine. It works great.
something
But
I'd love to mention is that biochar is actually incredibly understudied and, more importantly, undercategorized.
yeah,
And so, to be blatantly honest with you, no one has actually done any studies to say that biochar is better than just regular charcoal or anything like that. And the
yeah,
truth is that really the only parameter we have a firm grasp of in biochar is we can control the porosity of it based on
yeah,
temperature and oxygen content at the time of creation. However,
And
we
the type
still
of
don't
wood.
really yeah, but we still don't really know like what is actually best. Like you might think to yourself, oh, high porosity, that's probably going to be good. But again, there's no studies that definitively show that.
mm,
So like, at the same time, you can certainly use it and maybe see for yourself that you like it and whatnot.
yeah,
But like, again, yeah, it's still quite murky.
yeah.
And I'm a bit skeptical of that myself.
I think it raises the pH a little bit. I think it's kind of maybe not as much as I put a lot of oyster shells probably in my mix too. I don't know if that because I'm always recycling my container mix all the time, and it just continue to add stuff, and so the charcoal has been lately one of the ingredients I've been adding last couple of years, and a couple times I've tried to really not exactly OD on it, but see how much. And it seems like the most powdered stuff is kind of the problem. Like it kind of maybe goes to the bottom of the container and makes kind of a
Yeah.
sludgy mud down there.
So,
That's maybe the worst part about it. But other than that, so I just stopped grinding it up so much before I put it in. But I think it's really important if you use that wood charcoal to have it, make sure it's pre-wetted first, because it's definitely going to soak up a lot of water.
that's a good idea, though, to soak it and let it to suck up like a compost tea or
A compost tea, that's exactly what
or even like
I
one of these
suggest
ferments.
experimenting with that. Yeah. Or the ferments,
The
exactly. I'm
ferments, like,
sure.
oh yeah,
I think it actually sank faster. And my theory was appeared to sink faster in the the really smelly concentrated tea stuff than it did in the water. So you know, I don't know if there's any truth to that, because what I was doing was soaking the large chunks of charcoal and then crushing it up afterwards, which is really good because it makes it easy to crush, and it comes up out into nice sized pieces. Whereas if you crush it dry, it's more difficult, or at least I couldn't find a really good method to do it. I just do it out on the back porch with a stone, a tile,
Yeah,
cement tile that I just
I've done
smash it
that
a little
before.
bit and then flatten it down, stand on top of the tile and do the twist, or something. And that works pretty good. But at least, it's a cheap and inexpensive way that you could start to experiment with
Totally.
it. Sorry, I'm done.
that was good though to have a biochar segment because we have a whole different perspective with Heavy Days here tonight, and we've talked about it a few times. Heavy, you probably don't know how much you watch the show here, but we've talked about that a few times, and it's always nice to have a fresh perspective from somebody. So that was pretty cool.
I don't
Yeah,
think it's a
love
miracle a nutrient or anything, but yeah, we haven't experimented nearly enough with it.
Again,
There's really a lot
to
to
each
do.
his own. Every grower's got to pick his own poison and grow with it and then see what happens. And that's how we all can share this different information all the time.
Totally.
Oh yeah. So why don't you So why don't you tell it? No, sorry, I a little bit of a delay
I was
here
going,
with my internet.
where did Steve go?
Why don't you tell people how to find your podcast and
Yeah.
how they can find you and additional information on what you do.
Yeah, so in terms of the podcast, you can check it out on like iTunes podcasts if that's kind of like how you do it. I think pretty much most podcast apps have got a RSS feed link to it, so you should be able to find it. Otherwise, you can just go straight to the source, which is good old SoundCloud. If you're old school like me and you like SoundCloud, hit up SoundCloud. It's if you just Google the podcast, like obviously the space podcast, it should be pretty much the first link. Otherwise, on Instagram, same deal, and Heavy Days on Instagram. It all should pretty much be the first link. I don't know. Maybe I'm like letting everyone know subtly that I Google myself right now, but yeah, it should be the top link.
Hey, I'd like to invite you to. We've got a podcast section at ilovegrowingmarijuana.com, and I'd be honored if you'd come on there and post up your episodes, links to your episodes. We've got all these from this, and we're trying to build a section there. We've got more than just growing with fishes, and so I opened up a podcast section, and we got a nice organic section or something like that. If you ever want to share information there, a bunch of friendly members, older clientele too.
Yeah, man, I'd love to do that. Let's chat more about it.
All you got to do is join and start posting. I mean, like put a link to your podcast so everybody can see it. And then we've got 100,000. Or wait a minute, what is it, Hogmaster? I'm brain dead. I've been out in the sun all day building a fence.
He's not
a million. Well, we got like a million hits on our website every month.
Yeah, wow.
A million page views. I'm sorry, a million page views.
Yeah, that's impressive.
So you're welcome to, anybody's welcome. It's not like it's special. I'm not doing anything than inviting a cool guy to come and put his podcast links on our website, and then you pick up more audience from our website, because I think they'll like you if they listen to you. From what I've talked to you tonight, it's been very enjoyable.
We can
I appreciate
follow
it.
up with that after the show.
Okay.
Yep. So what have you been up to, Mr. Green Jeans?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's the light out here.
Here we go.
Oh my
He's
god.
in the garden.
I think we got some some bananas are ripe up there, aren't they? I can't figure out how to turn the phone camera around. So
it looks good now. That's way better than last week, buddy. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, that one's ripe.
You cut the heart off.
This one is these ones are ice cream bananas or blue Java. Only ones I have now. I used to have some Philippine burro bananas, but they get really big. And I had originally planted these crepe myrtles. They were really small, and they took a while to get big. And so the bananas in the yard were just sort of temporarily until the crepe myrtles are now taking over. They're getting really big, making beautiful flowers in the summer. So I don't water those, the crepe myrtles never get water. The fig never gets water. The loquat way in the back, that never gets water. The peach tree occasionally gets a little tiny bit of water. The bananas, just enough water to stay alive. They lose a lot of lower leaves, so I have to trim the lower leaves and compost them. There's a nice compost pile with there with a bunch of banana leaves in it. Citrus trees are going. Yeah.
You had to get a sugar apple. Some sweet salt.
Sugar apple. There's a bunch, they all my passion fruit vine is just dying, which is really kind of sad, but it was really old. It was a Frederick. It was the commercial variety, purple tine. And I managed to keep it alive a really long time, I think by not watering it is my theory. The first one I had, I probably overwatered it, and it only lived about 3 or 4 years. And this one, I think, lived maybe, I don't know, almost 10 years. Maybe.
Yeah, there's one at Ouroboros that's really rocking it. Totally, the hole in the front of it is just totally covered in passion flowers and fruit. Looks good. What are those?
Yeah, Oh, just some various plants that went outside because there really just wasn't enough room. And when I went up north, I left a lot of these out to just make it easier for my roommate or friends to take care of. It was too hard for them to get in. Didn't expect them to go in the closet. So I stuck them all out, and I guess they're gonna have to get repotted now. They're awfully. They're looking. The containers are very small.
Why don't
They
you
gotta go.
why don't you tell people what you were doing up north?
I was visiting you. I've got 6 little sprouts started already from the seeds you gave me.
Oh
Let's see.
damn.
Yeah, man. I'm very nurturing. You know how it is. Um,
Couldn't
God
wait
bless
to
him.
start that new genetic you never had in your hand before. I know it.
Lessons with Steve this weekend. So yeah, we got to 2 Shirley Temples. Geez, I don't know. I can't see whether that's down there. Yeah, there. And 2 Shirley Temples, 2 Blue Hash, brandy wine, and a Flow Chem Dog.
Yeah, the Flow Chem
Flow
Dog.
X Chem Dog. So it's one each of those. One brandy wine, 1 Flow Chem Dog, 2 Blue Hash, and 2 Shirley Temple number 1s.
Nice.
How about that? All germinated already in their little pots poking out. Those seeds came out fast. And one
Yeah.
of the blue hash seeds was really pretty freaky, man. It had very strong and wiry root that was branching out already. And when I was only about, still in the only after 2 days in the you know
Yeah, I've gotten some really, really amazing plants out
Yeah.
of that seed batch. Some of the
Unusual.
phenoms have come out of there really, really strong. So the phenome from that was grown in the wind in Colorado, like on the plains. So it has really large, thick stalks and really deep roots, and it does really well for just getting battered with high winds.
Wow, that sounds cool. I can see that they're unusual genetics already just from looking at the seeds. Obviously, really interesting. And
Oh yeah, they're all vary in size too, which is weird with that strain.
oh, huh, yeah. Well, that one, the root is like wiry. It's kind of like woody. It's really strange. It's like woody and kind of wiry, and it has these little branches coming off it already. And it's only like 1.5 inches long. Totally small, not even big enough to be growing into the paper towel yet, and already wiry and hard. Really strange. And both of those 2 seeds were gigantic. So of course the cotyledons and the top of the stem are already 1/4 inch thick. Or not really, but I mean, they are looking a little radiated, a little freaky. Yeah.
Yeah, that strain germinates really fast. It's one of the fastest
Oh
ones.
yeah.
Most of those
Yeah.
seeds, I think, are
They
only
all
like
came
3
up.
years old.
Yeah. I
3 years old.
think almost 100% germination. I think one Shirley Temple didn't go, or hasn't yet. I put it back in, and maybe another Blue Hash, and I put it back in. So give them a couple more days.
Cool.
But yeah, those other
Yeah,
ones are
that
just,
blue hash,
damn.
man, you get some good, strong stuff in there.
Whee! Well, it came well recommended. I was like, okay, I have to plant these.
Curious to see how they do for you, so it'll be fun. It's always good to
Oh,
share genetics. And then you
oh
got a chance to take part of my class, or most of my class
oh
anyway.
God, that was fantastic. Oh boy, was that great. Oh boy, was that fun. Yeah, I recommend that class to anybody. That was
And you
tip
bought
top.
like half the trout we had. You bought like
Oh yeah. Well,
up
yeah,
with a
my
whole
wife.
cooler of smoked trout.
It was really good though. It's really amazing. And we have the big Filipino family, and they all love fish. And so we chowed down on at least half of it already. It's just that. Oh yeah, the trout's great. I mean, I had 4 heads of lettuce, and we had the cooler. It had ice in the cooler. Brought it back in fantastic condition. I have some right now brought down to San Clemente. I still have really yummy. I was telling those guys that it's very, it's really melt in your mouth buttery lettuce that doesn't have a lot of plant structure to it. It's really really just really soft and everything. And they were they were marveling at that. It is really incredible. Amazing lettuce, amazing quality lettuce at Ouroboros Farm. Yep.
Well, thanks.
So
Yeah, it was cool to finally hang out and shoot the shit and smoke some weed and have some beers.
Yeah.
That's
had an
your stuff.
interesting
Your rosin.
Oh wow, thanks. Yeah, that was
So good.
Well, you had the way to smoke it. I still haven't got. I have to get a rig like that, something that I can use. That was amazing.
You got it's a bunch of
Oreo.
Oreo.
Yes, Oreo rosin, low temperature.
Let's see if my camera wants to work. There we go.
Oh wow.
Oreo rosin. What's left?
Yay. Nice.
It has like the strangest smell and terpene profile. It smells like a cross between like smells like chocolate covered DMT. It's like the weirdest smell.
It's very up. It's very stimulating. It really
it has the really weirdest, really strange smell to it.
Yes. It really gets your thoughts racing. And it definitely has an appetite suppressant effect when it's made into the oil suspension.
Have you had it lab tested? Do you know what the THCV level is?
No, absolutely not. But it's been, but the plant, people have been, what do you call that? Empirically making the observation about the quality of the high on Oreo for a long time. 7 or 8 years. My friend who is from South Africa, when he was running his sort of speakeasy and selling the same place he was growing, and getting a lot of feedback, on plant like that. So it was very clear that it's one of those really extreme, up-stimulating sativas. Maybe even maybe even the most extreme, or one of the most that I've encountered. And of course, it is half Durban poison, and Durban poison is known exactly for that. And so it's no surprise. And whatever I luckily crossed it with, and this other strain, the German.
You got a chance to try that really old rosin I have, the like 6-year-old rosin. What did you think of that? Because that is really different as well, profile.
That was tasty. It was good. Rosin stores really well. It's fantastic. Yeah. It's a great thing to do with, you have to have, I think it's got to have good flour or good hash going in before, so it matters what you're pressing to begin with. But I think the product obviously will store better than flour. I mean, flour, it's really hard to keep it, to keep the oxygen out of it, unless you could do that somehow. Yep. I guess you can suck it into a complete vacuum.
Also, we should also do a quick shout out to Canada for legalizing and Oklahoma for legalizing. Who the hell would have thought Oklahoma was going to legalize medical this week? Like, that was crazy.
Yep.
They just did it to piss off Texas. That's all.
Now there's more legal states than non-legal.
There's now. 30 states with medical now, and there's 48 states that at least have a CBD law.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's awesome. Great victory.
Yeah. 6 months. I give it 6 months for national.
6 months? No, you're dreaming.
Maybe a year.
Are you still corresponding with that?
I mean, I'm not for it. I'm for hold off the horses.
A presidential. They're gonna do a presidential election thing to try and sway the vote. Watch. I'm calling it now.
Right. Yeah, you're probably right.
No, for real, the Republicans could use that to help, ebb the tide of the coming wave.
Yeah.
For real, it would split a lot of the liberal vote.
Oh, you think if they went ultra conservative, you think it would pull a handful of liberal?
No, I'm saying you've already saw, like in Michigan, the Republicans and the right went and voted for weed in order to try and take it out of the election, but they might use it and say, hey, we're the party that wants to legalize weed. legalize weed if you vote for us, kind of thing.
Gotcha.
You could totally see them doing that. Or legalizing ahead of the right ahead of the election in order to take it away as an issue as well. You know, it could work either way.
Well, in the,
Like
the
how-
bottom line, in the end, it gets legalized. So
Well, is it legalization or is it
Yeah.
legalization in name only, like we have in California, where 85% of the counties have banned production, and we need to eliminate local control to even be able to open a damn business. I mean, not entirely, but it's really bad.
yeah, there's a. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, I was just gonna stop myself. I was just gonna go piss about legalization. So I'm good.
Oh no.
Yes,
Well, here.
That-
Why, I bet you. Have you heard much complaining there, Heavy Days, about legalization and people that live in legalization? If Marty was here, he'd be like, "Hold my beer."
Legalization heavy. I have the ability to grow probably 2,000 pounds of weed a year. And
All right.
Poor
All right.
as fuck, dude. Like poor as fuck because of the laws and not being able to move it because of it's flooded. Like I saw, I'm in the building process, so I pulled down I think 150 pounds on my first run last fall and froze the whole thing and have sat on it all year. I have not had a single person come to my farm and look at it. I had someone scheduled the day they were supposed to come, and they always bail for who the fuck knows why. Like they just catch a better deal. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's certain drawbacks of it, right?
Yeah, and that being said, I'm also confident. I'm stoked about what I'm doing, and I'm stoked to be getting into retail here pretty soon.
Yeah, dude, I couldn't imagine. But yeah, I mean, for me at least, I do have a little giggle at the complaints. But I mean, I understand them. They're all valid complaints. But like considering we're still in the dark ages, so to speak.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah. It's like
yeah, it's I don't know. But the thing is, there's also like a different level, because the thing is like the punishments over here have always been much less, and so over there, like, it was a big deal back in the day, where like although we're in that same time period, it's not quite the same, where it's like the same big type of deal, so to speak. So it's a little more lax in that regard. But I don't know. Yeah, it would certainly be nice to be able to grow something legally.
oh, totally. Well, and I feel stupid saying it too. That's why I was like, oh, I got to bite my tongue, because people are like, I have a guy that just moved out from a non-legal state, and he's like talking about saving nugs and saving roaches, and I'm like, dude, you know what I mean? Like I have so much weed, it's not an issue, right?
Yeah,
Like,
California.
I throw more weed away than most people like can purchase a year by far.
Like people say California kicked or Colorado kicked, and it's like, oh, it's not green anymore. Let's repack it.
What about
But
that
actually,
Canadian?
I just want to say, dude, Heavy, I really appreciate your podcast. It's inspired me this year. And what you guys are looking at, these are all seeds. I've been into seeds a little bit, but after listening to all that stuff, I just got really jacked up. And so these are all seeds. These are all seeds I'm sifting over here. I don't know if you can tell.
Man, that's so awesome to hear. Thank you so much. But that's
Yeah,
so cool
no,
that
it's
you're
cool,
going with
man.
the
I'm saving
seeds.
the males, and I've done a little bit of stuff and a little bit of breeding in the past, but I got really inspired. So thank you.
Get into it, man. Good people, good intentions makes good seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me
that's
ask
a
you
really
this.
good
What else I'm
quote.
growing is clones and moms.
Here's a question that you might know the answer to, since you're a breeder, and I'll show you. What's the story behind ABC, Australian Bastard Cannabis? There's the whole legend of
Yeah, so
Duck's Foot and Mark Emery and the whole thing, and that one plant being discovered and being kept at Sydney. As the story goes, this one plant was discovered in somewhere in northern Queensland, and it was like a perennial, and it was frost resistant, and they kept it at the Royal Botanical Gardens, and blah blah blah. As the story goes, anyway, who knows what's true? But do you know anything about that? Can you speak on that at all?
well, okay, so in terms of duck's foot, I've spoken to a lot of people about this, but I'm pretty sure me and Duke had a chat one night, and we basically came to the conclusion that duck's foot occurs in Hawaiian landrace. So it's certainly, as far as we can tell, it's not like the progenitor of that look, so to speak. In terms of the ABC, it's an interesting one. I'm not sure about that story, just because I have seen a lot of people grow and talk about ABC, though I haven't grown it myself or seen it in real life. A lot of people, it does flower, so I'm not sure how it could be a perennial per se. I mean, maybe it just lives afterwards, but I don't know. Um, but the thing is, that mutation, as unique as it is, I don't believe that it is the sole, like the only one, because there's that guy on Instagram, who's got like that mutant plant at the moment, and that comes from a pack of coastal seeds. And if I had not known that, and I didn't know that for some time, and I was just looking at this plant, and it looks about as weird yet different as ABC. So it looks like, as equally far out, but in like a different kind of far out way. And yeah, it's this plant, and he calls it like Freak Show or Mutant Show or something. He's got a big account. You can probably find the account pretty easy. It's just I'm not remembering the name right now. My apologies. But basically, I look at that and I'm like, yeah, that's all ABC was. It was just like like it's probably just a random pack of seeds, like the same as this coastal pack of seeds, and it just happened to produce this most insanely mutant plant you've ever seen. And the problem with ABC fundamentally, though, is that the bud's of no value. It's not particularly good bud, and it gives you like a headache, and it's more of like a novelty thing.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. Maybe somebody in chat knows what he's talking about that can post a link.
Wow, that's an awesome story.
Yeah. So is it something like a polyploid mutation or?
Well, I actually got a degree in genetics, so I get real personal about this one. There's no such thing as polyploid in cannabis. There's been no confirmed evidence. It's all anecdotal. Like, people just say it, but it's like no one has yet to take a plant to a lab and have them check for a third chromosome, and it's there. And so
Even with the
fundamentally,
crocosine?
say again, sorry.
Even with the crocosine, even introducing
Colchicine.
Colchicine.
Wouldn't you be able to, in theory, kind of almost,
Yeah,
heavily?
you could certainly try to induce it, but my theory is that it's non-viable. It's just simply non-viable, and that's why we haven't seen it. Much the same way as, like, for example, with Down's syndrome, trisomy 21, that's a viable form of polyploidy. However, if you look at multiple other chromosomes, if you have duplicates of them, you actually can't get like trisomy 6, because it works out to be non-viable. So I have a feeling that would be the case with cannabis, because we just haven't seen it thus far, and it's just not documented, so to speak. And everything which people commonly point to and suggest might be polyploidy, it works out to just actually be like just a generalized mutation. And the thing is that you can get big full on mutations. So like if you get a mutation within like a Hox locus, that's going to affect the full-on morphology of the plant in every way, because that's like essentially a regulatory zone for plant morphology. So you know what I mean? Like, depending on where the mutation occurs can have widespread results, versus it could be quite a small mutation and it just manifests itself as something small, like maybe plant variegation.
Yeah, I actually had a variegated plant way back when. I actually have it made it all the way through veg, and then it kind of died off in flower. But I saw quite a bit of YouTube footage of that. I thought it was pretty weird. I had never seen it where it was like kind of stable,
Yeah, I love variegated plants, right? And I also loved whirling phyllotaxy, like the 3 and 4 node plants. Those are cool.
Yeah, that's one I haven't run into yet, but that sounds really interesting.
I have a plant that's really difficult to pollinate. And it's also incredibly vigorous and has gigantic leaves and short internodes. It's a clone, and some kind of mutation with the pistils that make it very difficult to pollinate. Even if you really kind of dust the plant, you only get about 4 or 5 seeds. So it's kind of unusual. I don't know whether it's polyploid or not. I've never had it tested, but it's interesting in that way.
I would say definitely not, because I mean, at the very top of my head, there's a extremely notable cut at the moment, which is the exact same as that Capulator's Mac cut, the Mac 1. It's notorious for not accepting pollen, and so Yeah, exact same situation. That's most likely not necessarily a mutation, but just more of likely an unfortunate, reality of the plant.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I figured. I think it's a mutation of the pistil, as a lot of them look kind of strange. A bunch of them have club foots on the end. There's the regular split ones, which is not too uncommon, but there's many
Yeah,
of them
see,
with sort of a club ending.
yeah, if it is an issue with the pistol, then it wouldn't be passing the DNA down to have the recombination event and form the seed. So yeah, that could well explain it.
Cool.
Very cool. No, I'm glad I asked that question because you gave a really good answer. I didn't know that was actually no one's proven that for cannabis yet. 'Cause I've seen
Yeah, I suspected it.
three or four pictures online, and I'm very familiar with what they do for other ag crops with the crocosine, but I just assumed it would work. But that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean they probably have, and in places like Israel, I'm sure they've fiddled with it like that, and it could work. But what I'm saying is, as far as like just naturally emerging from nature, it hasn't emerged. And then the next part is speculation, like in that I suspect the reason why we haven't seen it is because it's just simply non-viable. Because you would expect with the number of cannabis plants that have been grown worldwide by now, it probably would have popped up, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But yeah, obviously the second part's just speculation.
No, it's real interesting though. I'd always thought that that was something that was possible. That's really interesting. So very cool. I'm glad I asked that. Is there any other weird mutations that you've seen? I know what was interesting to me is I didn't see any flat stalk, which correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's fasciation, correct?
Yes, yes, yep, that's correct.
So in Jamaica, they did so much open pollen breeding that I didn't see that hardly at all. I don't think I saw that a single time, and I went through probably 40 acres of plants when I was there.
Wow,
And
that's cool,
it
man. You
was
should tell
really
me more about
interesting.
that.
Yeah, I got some videos on my YouTube channel on Potent Ponics on YouTube, but it was really cool to go through and see like whole fields, and it was beautiful from the point of view of like, wow, this is a lot of weed, but it was also like, as from a breeder standpoint, it was like broke my brain because I've never seen so many phenomes in one place all at once. Like it was no uniformity. It was like, I don't know, part of me wanted to scream
Yeah,
as a
that's
breeder.
depressing. Yeah,
But it was really cool to be able to walk around right at harvest and just kind of pick out, look at the structure of the plant right at harvest, and then oh, I want some seeds from that one. Oh, I want some seeds from this one, and it was really neat to kind of just be able to look at the traits right at harvest and pick them fully ripened seeds too, which was kind of neat.
yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of weird mutations, uh, so I haven't been able to do this one, but I think it's cool and it's worth noting is I'm sure most people have come across the fan leaf that's got the little tiny calyx in the middle of it forming.
Yep.
Um,
Yes.
that's a pretty cool mutation. What I saw a guy do is you can actually do this really random thing where some people may have seen this other mutation whereby it's not really a mutation, but like you can actually clone leaves. Like if you snap a leaf off,
Yep.
it can actually shoot taproots out. And so this guy basically had one of those leaves with the calyx in the middle, and he's like snapped it off, got it to root, and then he's put it under 24-hour light, and then got like a stem to come out, like to re-veg out of that single calyx in the middle of the leaf. And he's managed to get a clone out of it. I thought that
Wow.
was, yeah, that was like the most inventive thing I've ever seen.
That's like spur mutation in apples or something, you know?
I I got a pepper clone to live for about 2 weeks, about 2.5 weeks on a sativa once.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, because people always talk about like grafting hops and stuff to cannabis.
Oh yeah, no, it was definitely dying at the end, but it managed to just live long enough to at least to finish off one pepper. So it was just kind of a half-assed joke because my coworker was like, "Oh, what are you doing, cutting clones of the peppers to graft your weed?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna try that just to prove you wrong." So
That's great.
yeah, but that's I've seen all different kinds of different mutations as far as What about foxtailing? Because that seems to be one of the other things that seems to be more prominent in certain strains than others.
Yeah, the thing with foxtailing that I find to be really interesting is that it's like it's both it can be a mutation or like just a genetic component of the plant. You know, like some plants are just predisposed to do it, whereas others, like maybe you give them a bunch of heat and they'll do it, and then others, like maybe they shouldn't do it, and then something causes them to do it. So for me, it's always hard to distinguish. And I also kind of have this internal thing where it's like, do I like foxtailing? Do I not like it? Like I kind of, on the one hand, sometimes I find it aesthetically pleasing, and then other times I don't find it aesthetically pleasing. And so it's like, it kind of becomes like such a subjective thing where it's like, like the devil's in the details of every individual instance, for me at least.
Great
Mm.
answer.
Do
Totally
you find
agree.
it's more prevalent in sativa phenols? That's what I thought. I mean,
Oh
that's what
yeah,
definitely.
undeniably,
Oh yeah.
undeniably.
Yeah, okay.
And then Mr. Green Jeans actually has a strain that produces lots of twins. What is it? I forget. The
Yeah,
percentages.
I was thinking about that a minute ago, but I was waiting for Mr. Green Jeans.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a seed batch, one particular seed batch that had at least, I don't know, 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 seeds was twin seedling. Really cool.
Yeah, that's
So I
cool.
presume, and I didn't go back and rebreed it because I hadn't saved that male. And it's very possible that I think it was a generation where I used a couple of males together in sort of a progeny testing kind of thing, but not in the sense of saving the males and going back to breed them, just to having it included them. So it's quite possible that one of those males crossed with that particular female always produce, because it could, I think, if I use pollen from 3 or 4 males, that would have been about 1/4 of them would have had some kind of influence like that. So I just always like to imagine that possibly that male and that female produced all these twins, but I don't know. It could have been something else too. Maybe it was the female herself that always produced a percentage of twins. No way to tell. But it's cool. I never got I was looking, of course, you're imagining, I was definitely looking for a male and female pair because of the theory of, being able to cross them, and oh boy, they're going to be so closely related, I'll have an instant strain or something like that. But that wasn't, the reality was they mostly twin males and a couple of twin females. I never got a twin male and female, at least not out of that seed batch. I'm not saying it couldn't be done.
Yeah, there you go.
Possible enough. And
I
who
wanted
knows
to
what
give- No, go
makes
ahead.
is it's something like a mutation there again, mutation in this almost the seed form. I wish I could go back and look more closely at the female. She was a white wizard female in generation 5 or 6, and I didn't save a clone of her. Just had the seeds off of her, and so it would have been really cool to be able to go back and look at more closely at the flower itself, more closely at the pistils, and maybe look at the seeds again a little bit more closely before popping them. So, and this was a seed batch that I ended up planting about 100 of. So I kept going back in waves and replanting the exact same seed batch and getting in the end, 10 or 11 total pairs or twins. But I
That's
got a
good.
twin recently too, in this Dutch genetic seeds that I got from Holland. And I immediately, since I had practice separating them, I was like, oh, cool, boom, separated them. I still have them. They're not particularly special. They were both females. The entire batch was females. It was supposed to be male and female, but they turned out to be either unbelievably lucky, 10 in a row. I'm sorry, 11 in a row, females, or they were actually feminized seeds. I think my theory.
Yeah, maybe with
Unless
Amsterdam.
I couldn't possibly have been lucky to roll the dice right 11 times. Or no, I flipped the coin. I'm sorry, I'd be flipping the coin 11 times tails in a row, or 10 times tails in a row. That's not likely. They were supposed to be male, female seeds. at work.
Did you just assume that seed's gender?
Yeah. No, well, they said on the package they were supposed to be regular seeds. They were non-feminized. And I know Erla definitely asked for them when she was there. But, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, 11 out of 11 is kind of stretching it. I've had really high or, pack of regulars that all turned out to be females, but that was only, 3 to 5 seeds. And
Yeah.
that's just luck. I like to ask you a question, Heavy, because one of my thoughts is that now, see, here we go, because I feel like I've always felt like I use shorter photo periods when I veg, or when I start, after I start a regular seed, and I felt like with certain environmental controls and a shorter photo period, I get more females. What do you think about that claim?
No.
No.
It's
The genes are
predetermined.
pretty.
Yeah, the moment that
Yeah.
pollen
See.
hits it, it's done.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. I'll never
But-
say it again.
But there are much more wiser and more experienced people who disagree with me, like DJ Short. So I just guess keep that in mind.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm not alone in my thoughts then. That you
No, not at all. There's very much two schools of thought on this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've always
I
thought
don't-
that. Well, I've done the research because through a decade and a half, and I've always had a very high female count, and but I'm a real proponent of shorter photo periods in vegetation, and and stronger root production as opposed to people that like I will never grow 24/0. And if you're taught by me, you don't grow 24/0 either, like you were mentioning. But there's a ton of people out there that have grown 24/0 their whole life. They're still growing 24/0, and new people are growing. So it's again, it goes back to we all try to share information, and you got to take it for what it's worth and do what you want to do. But yeah, it's interesting. Thank you for that clarification that you don't like it, you don't think it at all, but but I wanted your take on it. So all right, that weighs on that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, like I think the thing which makes it hard is people will always say, "Yeah, I get like 60 to 70% females or something like that," but people aren't as quick to be like, "Oh yeah, and in one pack I got 7 males." You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like it doesn't stand out in your mind the same. And I think that when I talk to a lot of big breeders, maybe not DJ Short, for example, but others, they tend to agree with me that like, for every person who's really happy with a pack of seeds, they sometimes get emails from people who are like, "Dude, I got 8 males," and they're like, "Oh man, I'm sorry, I'll get you some more seeds." You know what I mean? Like that's
Right.
kind of a fact of it.
This bad
Yeah.
luck. Some plants also give more females. I think I definitely I have some plants here that I think give a 70% or 75% or more ratio of females. I think it's just a certain female plants themselves often give a high ratio, but I think it's sort of a genetic thing again.
So I'm thinking it could be all of it. It could be genetically dispossessed to an extent.
Yeah,
but
because I use a very short day length as like you do, Roger. I use 16 hours as well. But
Right.
I don't know if that really, I think I generally get more like 50-50, but I've noticed that some plants or some, strains, certain genetics, they sort of are more likely to have generally a higher ratio of females to males. And then, of course, there's always the possibility but the possibilities of these skewed ratios are much greater when you plant fewer seeds.
Well, that's true. And that's what I was
Gotta be
going to say.
said.
You planted a gazillion more seeds than I have.
Yeah,
so.
when you plant lots of seeds, you get much closer. You generally get a lot closer to 50-50 ratio.
That's a good point.
And I think Mary Jane always smiles on new growers. I've never seen anybody plant one seed and get a male. I mean, I don't know, maybe like in the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, but that's a myth anyways. I think most of the time, first-time growers, if they just grow a bag seed, Mary Jane smiles on them and they get a female. And, I swear it happens most of the time. I don't know why that is, but it's true. I don't know. So, but yeah, usually it's 50-50.
I've had, especially when I used to live on the East Coast, there was, people knew I was a big stoner and whatever, and they'd show me their plants, and then it was so funny to see people like super babying, super proud of their plant, and it's a male. They've been growing it for like 4 or 5 months, and it's huge, and it's a male.
But it
You're
wasn't
just
their
like,
first time, was it? It was their second time or something, wasn't it?
no, it was
I
like
don't
their first time growing.
Oh, it was? Ooh,
I
that's
can't tell you
cool.
how many times, probably 6 times that's happened to me.
Ooh, that's cruel.
It's really
We
funny.
got members too
Well,
that do the
if
same
they're-
thing. I've been cooking. I've been
But you
growing
can-
this plant for four months under 24-0. When's it going to flower?
Oh yeah. So you can actually get bubble hash from some of the males. Sometimes some of them frost up pretty good.
That's the one thing that I found that you say that I've found real interesting is the information you've been sharing about how you can extract something good out of a male plant, and that's something a lot of people because are interested in because they're always going, I got these male plants. Well, first of all, if you don't want to breed, they're kind of a hazard, but Steve has an idea if you can isolate them, but can you really isolate them?
Yeah, it was funny. Somebody in chat was just saying how their whole family knows about their grow, and the whole family helps them. And it's funny. I know a lot of people that do that and helps people, especially people with sick family members. Appreciate it.
Well, I want to give out a shout out to Hogmaster on that because he does that for his family.
Yep,
that's a great point about everybody getting together like that, and people, it often does bring together like the older people and the younger people in the family.
Yep.
Get interested in growing together.
Fantastic
point, Steve.
Yep. Family bonding with cannabis.
Right. And grow together in all kinds of ways.
A family that grows together stays together, right?
Alrighty. Well, what have you been up to, Roger?
Well, I've been building a fence so I can put up a little greenhouse section. My greenhouse structure comes in 24-foot sections, so I'm going to take one of them and move it out behind a privacy fence I'm building on the front of our property and start construct. Well, I'm going to do some more research because there's so many ideas, but I've got some pretty good friends that know what they're doing. So I'm going to be constructing my first aquaponics system in there. I'm going to use it partially for storage to start with because I got some issues with the county, but it's basically being put out there to for me to start. Well, I'm just going to build the system and learn how to keep the fish alive. And then before I'm worried about grow beds, so to speak, although I'll probably build a grow bed as soon as I get the system going, get the fish in there, I'll be building the system, but the beds and all, but I've got a million things to do. So really, I just want to get it there. As Marty called it, I want a mothership. I'm probably going to start with a little bit bigger reservoir and a little bit more fish than some people, but I want to be able to branch out to different parts of my yard to make different gardens, like, indoor and outdoor, or greenhouse and outdoor, and because I got all the space and I'm even thinking about the fence, how I've got the shady side for some plants and it's going to be shady some, and sometimes here you can't run from the sun, but that's basically what I'm doing. I'm pretty wore out tonight, actually. It's thanks that we had such a great guest that woke me up, because I was wore out from the sun today out there all afternoon, but I had to do it. And my lady was home. My strange lady was home today, and so we had to work together. And ain't no taking too long of a break when that's going on. So that's all I'm doing right now. I'm keeping my little perpetual grow going and teaching at ilovegrowingmarijuana.com and trying to. We got a great moderating team over there, and just trying to. I'm proud of the fact that we've got a really mature clientele, the membership, and a lot of people coming in there and loving it. It's very friendly. It's a no bullshit community. We don't allow like a lot of communities you may go to, and I've been a member of a lot of communities, and I've moderated from cannabis.com, to being 15 years later here at I Love Growing Marijuana.com as the administrator. And I've got some great friends and staff that we built out there, and very happy to be part of that. I recently got back into it. I was kind of doing a lot of admin stuff and taking care of my own personal business, but I recently have been going back. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love to go with the forum every day and find the latest post and the new post where new members join and they don't know how to grow. And that's what I love more than anything. I'd rather, I love getting them new guys right off the bat so that they understand, they get a good foundation on how to grow. And that's what I'm concentrating on right now. The aquaponics system and getting back to the roots of helping these new growers before they develop bad habits, kind of thing. I guess I'm the elementary school teacher, of the cannabis world in some ways. At least that's the part I love. I like that better than being, like being considered an expert or something. I like making sure the new people have a chance when they get there, So that's about it.
Cool. And I've just been working on our licensing. We're gonna have our Canada stuff all tied up here soon. Working on getting our stuff tied down here in California. We're getting pretty close on that. So just a lot of paperwork, a lot of meetings, a lot of phone calls. So all the not fun parts of running a cannabis business. So.
Well, you missed a show. That can tell us how busy you've been, because we don't miss shows around here. And you were in Texas, weren't you?
Yeah, I was traveling down in Texas, and yeah, been running around all kinds of stuff lately.
One minute,
wherever the wind blows.
The next minute you're freaking Texas.
Yep.
Just don't ride a motorcycle.
But just as easy to find weed in both places, my dude.
Speaking of Texas, anybody heard from our friend Braingrow?
I haven't heard from him.
I
can look at his Facebook and see if he's he's logged in.
Did we make all the aquaponics guys pissed off, and they don't come around anymore?
What do you mean?
Where's
Marty?
Fish Marty? We know Marty's got children, little baby.
Fish's job has got him to where he can't make Thursdays too much right now. But that'll change. It's not like a permanent thing. It's just for now. But he'll be back again.
Well, it's like Brain goes to school too. Didn't he go to school last year and we missed him for like 2 or 3 months, something like that?
Yep. And then Old Fart Grows will be back pretty soon, before too long. And then we'll have some other people back here soon. We have our 100th anniversary coming up. I think we're gonna get the Spectrum King guys on again soon. And
love that.
Rasta Jeff from Grow From Your Heart's coming up. And I forget who else is on the list right now. I don't have the list open but I have quite the list. We're going to have Suzanne Wainwright Evans will be on the show soon. Sometime soon. She's kind of the world's expert on beneficial insects, especially for large scale. So that'll be really fun as well. So. Alrighty. So anyone else? Why don't you tell people how to find you there, Josh? All right.
Oh, sorry, I was
No worries.
taking a rip. Just on my IG, Dutch Blooms, and then I also have the Science of Organic Regenerative Cannabis IG and website. And actually, today I posted a Facebook group to kind of just create some discussion around that stuff. If anyone's interested, I sent out some links, and I posted up on IG. The links on my IG.
Cool. That's awesome. What about you, Mr. Green Jeans? The original, the one and only.
Yeah, we had a great time. That was really fun up there in Northern California. Atlas had a great time. Rilla had a great time.
Yeah, kick-ass time.
What's your website?
Oh, Mr. Green Jeans. Greenjeansgarden.com. Yeah, a lot of people have been. Yeah, I've been getting a lot of emails, and Erla's starting to has been filling some seed orders and things like that. So I don't have a
Sweet.
a shopping cart or anything going on the site really, but it's wonderful. I'm getting a lot of attention from this site, and I mean from this podcast and other things. I guess I don't know what's going on, but it's been awfully fun. And it was really great to go up and visit Steve last weekend. That was really super fun.
Hell yeah! Brought me some genetics. Got to smoke some rosin.
Yep.
Good times.
We met those really. You had fantastic students there. I met the guy from San Pedro, which is right up where my big Filipino family lives, and then the lady was from. Where was she from? She was Native American.
Yeah.
Older lady. She
from
was
Humboldt.
amazing, and then
From Humboldt. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Gray and Micah were from over there in
Santa Fe.
Yeah, Santa Fe, New Mexico, exactly. They were
That's
really
good.
interesting.
No, that was cool.
Yeah, it was amazing, a diverse class and they were all really serious. They're all people who had quite a bit of experience and stuff, quite a bit of knowledge already. They weren't they weren't beginners. They came to the right place. Hey Steve, what happened to what happened with the CEO, the Canadian CEO, calling you a liar about prices?
No, it's all, oh yeah. There was a guy. Well, anyways,
Can you talk allegedly?
No,
Never mind.
I can't talk about that on here. No.
All right, then never mind. Forget it. I'm sorry.
I've been
No,
waiting for Steve to put the
No.
stoplight on.
I could.
It's super funny.
Well,
It's
okay.
super funny.
I could say this. I had a very interesting call with someone from Canada who did not realize how low the prices were in the West Coast, and then
somebody who is probably pretty big in the business and probably has a lot invested in it, so he's very upset. He's very pissed off at Steve for quoting a price that really did not fit his future business plans.
Yeah, it was pretty funny, but yeah. Anyways, I can't really get into.
Sorry,
anyways,
I shouldn't.
It was pretty entertaining, but yeah, I can't talk much about that.
Yeah, I think that needs to stop. Yeah.
So, anyways, on that note, what about you, Rod? Oh, you are just whenever your stuff. What about you, Heavy Dayze? How do people find you and your stuff? One last time.
Yeah, guys. We've actually got a YouTube channel. I forgot about that. Yeah, the podcast. Check that one out. SoundCloud, the podcast. Instagram, the podcast.
Still?
Yeah, I should be more on top of that one, right? And then Instagram, Heavy Dayze. Heavy Dayze is kind of like more my personal thing. But if you're interested, check it out.
I bet you can just Google Heavy Dayze and you'll find out everywhere he's at. No doubt.
Exactly right. Yeah. And more.
And more things you might not want to see.
Too much.
All right.
Well, I wanted to say something real quick since we're ending the show. I did want to, I was talking about our website. I want to give a big shout out to Robert Bergman and the people over in Europe that run the company, and for giving us all a chance to have this opportunity and to do all that we've done to help people and be part of this industry. Because I talk about me and we talk about the moderators all the time, but without having we actually have jobs, at a cannabis website, and it's really cool. And I want to give a big shout out to the boys over there in Amsterdam, for having the foresight to build one of the best, not the best, cannabis forum on the planet. So that's my last little thing there. Thank you.
And if we're doing shout outs, I'm going to quickly get in on it. Shout out to all my friends who help me in my endeavors, everyone in Australia who's pursuing, the greater good cause in general, fighting the good fight, everyone who listens to the show. And anyone who loves or hates me. Thanks, guys. You're the world.
All around the world.
Thanks again for taking the time to come on the show, especially.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Sorry.
That's
really
like the
great.
most important thing of all. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm so sorry. That should have been like the first thing. So thanks for listening to my musings. I'm sure I'm sure someone found something useful and something not useful out of it.
Oh, you were a wealth of information. Really, don't sell yourself short.
Oh yeah, totally. It was a blast having you on, and you're welcome anytime. And I'm sure we'll get you back on again here in a couple of episodes at some point.
Yeah, I'd love to come back, guys. Thanks so much for having me again.
Awesome.
Stop by anytime.
Yep. Thanks. And everyone can find me on Potent Ponics on YouTube, and then you can find me on SoundCloud, iTunes, same as him. Anything that has an RSS feed, really, I'm pretty sure I've uploaded it to at this point. And what else? WeedTV.com. Big shout out to Weed TV. We're still iHeartRadio, but a big shout out to Weed TV
Our buddies.
as well. We'll be switching over there full time and totally not streaming on YouTube at some point here in the near future. Just trying to facilitate the chat and keep things going at least a little bit over on the other platform. But it's great to have a nice place where we don't have to worry about being harassed at all like we do on YouTube. So. So thanks a lot for everyone watching and listening, and we'll catch you guys next week. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye, y'all.